begins. The mountain stirs once more. Beneath its crags, cliffs, and rocks, there's evil in its core. Fire made flesh, dragon's breath, teeth and claws and flame, calling any heroes out there that are brave or just insane. Blackrock Mountain, a Hearthstone adventure.
Hello everyone and welcome to a History of Hearthstone week number 3. I am Raven. I'm going to be bringing you this week's show matches that are going to be going on as part of the History of Hearthstone tournament, and joining me is my usual partner in crime. It is Sottle. How's it going, friend? Are you ready for week number 3?
I am incredibly ready, Raven. Thank you for asking. This is, of course, the week where Patron Warrior entered the fray, which anyone who's ever listened to me talk about Hearthstone or followed me on Twitter or even involuntarily overheard me talking probably knows that Patron Warrior is my favorite deck of all time. But, of course, we won't be seeing too much of that most likely because the Warstone Commander nerf still stands. We can't unnerf those cards, so expect lots of complaints probably as they become insufferable, basically trying to get Warstone Commander the Molten Giant treatment.
You're saying expect complaints as you become insufferable, like these are new things.
That's true.
These things are as old as Sol's time in Hearthstone itself, so very relevant that we've been called upon to cast the History of Hearthstone. Just in case you don't know what this is a tournament that's been going on across multiple weeks, and this is how it looks here. Week 1 was just classic Hearthstone, good old-fashioned basic and classic set. Then week 2, we had Curse of Naxxramas and Goblins and Gnomes enter the fray. And now, so I'll have our pleasure to bring you week 3 with Blackrock Mountain and the Grand Tournament. It's going to be coming at you, your way. And both of these expansions, even though, the Grand Tournament was a full expansion, Blackrock Mountain was an adventure, I feel like both have similar levels of impact in terms of just a few core cards that made such big impact on the meta.
Yeah, so of course Blackrock Mountain landed that Patron, but let's take a look at the records first before we get deep into that. The big surprise here, looking at this, I guess, is Dane going out to a 2-0 record, which I know he has a lot of fans in the chat, but with the greatest respect, he's not a top-tier competitive player like many of the other people in here. So Dane being at a 2-0 record is a little surprising to me. The other 2-0s face off this week, Neriah and Zalay, meaning he could be the only undefeated player left. But for Neriah and Zalay, it's been, them taking this very seriously, prepping heavily. Neriah had a really good target lineup week 1 that I really liked. Zalay in his interview as well said that he'd been prepping like an extraordinary amount for this tournament because he really enjoyed playing it. Whereas for Dane, I guess it's just like the experience as being primarily a wild player. He knows how these cards work. The interactions are all fresh in his mind, and that's just the edge that he's getting, as well as last week, it's got to be said, some pretty nice draws in a few of his games.
Yeah, and I will say as well, just so you guys at home watching are aware, the Orange versus Ant match, unfortunately, is going to have to be played off stream, as Ant, there's tons of players traveling for multiple events. There's some in China, some going to, to Austin as well this weekend. But unfortunately, Ant had a few issues with his travel. Unfortunately, couldn't hit the time required. So he's going to be playing Orange off stream though, and we'll update you on these scores as and when that match happens. But we're bringing you the other 3. And yeah, I think it's just, in terms of Zalay, just saying he just enjoys this format or this style of tournament. Just give a shout out to the organizers as well, because more formats and more ways to play the game is something I don't think anyone will ever complain about and anyone will ever get enough of. And having all these different things come up and different ways to deck build as these new expansions become playable again is pretty cool. But let's take a look at the first one. It's Blackrock Mountain, and I said to you earlier today, so Blackrock Mountain, Emperor, Patron, Gang Boss, and Dragons. Go.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the summary for me.
Tempo Mage got a really big boost with the Flame Waker as well. Gang Boss basically made any style of Warlock viable. We had Zoo, we had Handlocks and Demon Locks, and we also had Malagos Warlock, I believe, having strong success around this time as well, all based around that one individual early game minion. And of course, the Patron Thorasan package creating what could have been regarded as perhaps the best deck, the strongest deck to ever exist in Hearthstone. But as we mentioned, nerfed cards stay nerfed. We have no way of rolling those back to the old days. So Warsong Commander is RIP, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I will say though that overall there were just some pretty powerful cards in Blackrock, and the Grand Tournament might not have had the breadth of a 132 card set that you'd feel or remember. But if you look at a few of the cards on here, Mysterious Challenger, one of the most powerful archetypes we've ever had in the game, in my opinion. Justicar Trueheart, basically defined Control Warrior for a very, very long time, and then Twilight Guardian pulls that dragon package together along with Blackrock Mountain Dragons. And then, you know, you may remember Totem Golem and Tuskar Totemic as nightmares, but Tuskar Totemic again suffers from the Warsong Commander issue of where we cannot unnerf it, so I ain't going to bring a Totem Golem for those guys that are going to be playing today. But also as well, Shaman did not have some of the more aggressive tools such as Tunnel Trog and Spirit Claws yet in this tournament. That's going to be a little bit further down the line.
Yeah, and of course, Bolf Ramshield, the most important card to come out of that expansion. At least if you're Savitz, Bolf Ramshield was the best card in that expansion, I don't know. But yeah, TGT was an interesting one because it had like core mechanics. You know, there's always generally like a theme of mechanic, like a new keyword gets introduced or whatever when an expansion comes out. TGT had two in Inspire and Joust, and neither of them really landed. You know, Thunderbluff was one of the only Inspire cards that saw play, and that was only until later on. Joust just like never really worked out. There was that one Paladin card that I don't remember the name of, the healer guy, right? Tuskar Jouster, is that the card?
Yeah.
That was
that Joust guy.
Yeah, that was like the one card that sometimes saw some play in the Joust mechanic that I can really think of. And I guess like now later in the game, there's kind of Joust effects that are being played now in like big spell mage and stuff. But
yeah, that's true.
Enough reminiscing. We've got a game on deck, and it is Dane, our undefeated hero, going up against JustSaying. What do you think of these lineups, Raven?
Yeah, the big thing that sticks out to me is the sheer power of Secret Paladin. I'm just surprised that JustSaying isn't bringing Paladin in his lineup at all, as we see the Mage banned out. And then Dane's Warrior's banned out, so he does have his Paladin live. But I will touch on something that we've maybe not gone too into. We talked about how the impact of the cards from the newer expansions created some new decks, but let's talk about some old decks. Freeze Mage with Emperor Thaurissan. That is scary in itself.
Yeah, Freeze Mage with Emperor Thaurissan or Tempo Mage with Flame Waker, both very scary at this point. Just to touch on the idea of the Secret Paladin not being brought by JustSaying, because it's so powerful and so well known and so synonymous with the TGT meta, it's the deck that you're going to expect everyone to bring, right? So along those lines, do you really want to bring it and open yourself up to a kind of target strategy that is available, even with, you know, nerfed Warsong Patron Warrior in the mix? Patron still makes a big mess of Secret Paladin if you were using those whirlwind effects and death bites and so on. So maybe a couple of players will be too scared of Secret Paladin getting targeted to end up bringing it to this tournament.
Yeah, and this is one of those matchups, right? You know, we can see Paladin versus Warrior as we go into game number one. Dane on the Paladin with a good old shielded mini bot being dropped down there, and it's Saying on the Warrior with Frothing Berserkers, Whirlwinds, Acolyte of Pain, Armor Smith. You know, you remember these from back in the day as just a core part of a lot of, you know, of these Warrior decks. And mainly Patron. So we'll see what it's going to be, but I'd struggle to see this hand from Saying and not imagine Patron.
This Coghammer, though, this card was the juice. Coghammer was like one of those cards that really flew under my radar until I got to play with it, and then the first time I used it, I was like, yeah, this card is absurd. The Divine Shield gave it such like early game ability to break board tension, and then because you made like a Divine Shield taunt, it was also an amazing smoke weapon at like the end of the game as well. You could just race with it and like force your opponent to trade with a Divine Shielded taunt. Super clutch card. You can see it being used here just to take care of that frothing nice and easy. Yeah,
it was really flexible, and you could always, the fact that you could manipulate the minions on the board, right, to make that or try and help the Divine Shield and taunt hitting a certain minion. It was absolutely savage at some times. Saying just going to answer with the Acolyte just to get more cards underway as Inner Fire, Inner Fire. Too much current casting. Inner Rage is going to be drawn there for JustSaying, but Dane just dropping another staple of the early Hearthstone history game, which is that piloted Shredder. And already Dane looks like he's just putting on a lot of pressure that Saying just doesn't really have the best answers to right now.
Mechanics on point as well. Shredder on the right-hand side of his mini-bot as we looked, which means if the hero power gets spawned, it then goes to the right of the Shredder, meaning this is a margin better than putting it on the left and stacking your other minions to the left.
Is he going to play around Doomsayer coming out of Shredder, though? That's the question we've all got to ask ourselves.
The classic Shredder casting memes, dude. Oh, they're so good.
One thing that I will say is there, as far as I'm aware at least, this Shredder can drop any 2-drops in the game.
Yeah.
So it can get a little bit funky and maybe not as close to the time as we want it to be, but it's still pretty close for me. And I already talked about this Paladin. It's more of a mid-range list, right?
It is, yeah. I did want to mention that. He's picked up the lay on hands, so it's unlikely that we're going to be seeing any challenger stuff. We haven't seen any indication of secrets and stuff either, but yeah, back in the day when Shredder was originally relevant, the chances of like, you know, a Direwolf or Flame Tongue was like 2 out of 80, right? A Doomsayer was 1 out of 80, and a Noyatron was 1 out of 80. So these are like niche things that you actually considered playing around. Now it's 1 out of, you know, God knows how many 2-drops there are in the game right now. I haven't gone and counted. So things like niche individual outs like that of Shredder just becomes so much more unlikely.
Yeah, and we see I love that spell shifter coming down from the newest expansion going on there. That can become a 4-1 if required, but not going to happen when it comes out of a Shredder. Thank you for lovely production, showing us not the cards that we may have forgot because they're old, but the cards we don't know yet because they're new.
I'm not going to lie, I had no idea what that was.
I put that one in Paladin on like one of the first days of the expansion, yeah. Before Call to Arms nerf.
But for me, it looks like Saiyan is going to have a hard time grinding his way back onto this board, and this is exactly the kind of situation where the nerf of Warsong really did punish this deck, because when you're behind on board with this new Patron Warrior that you can still play with the Warsong nerf, it's much, much harder to come back than if you can just suddenly charge a bunch of Whirlwind effects and Grim Patrons and just get full board control that way. So yeah, this is going to be a mess for JustSaying from this spot.
Also, the impact of no death spite early on, for JustSaying, to be honest. Like, there was just no way to actually just throw away that board on Dane's side and get a frothing down relatively safe. But the Godhammer got some work done, and now it's good old boom bots hitting boom bots. And there goes the spell shifter guy.
Dane throws back his head like, no, I lost my 1/4, my super relevant minion. Oh, come on, it's not a big deal.
Might double Blessing the Kings next turn if he somehow draws it, you never know.
Fair enough.
It's a big minion. We see as well another impactful change with nerfs from more recent times. Execute not being 1 mana. Like, that's a big deal when you're running a more of a tempo/combo based deck as opposed to a controlling deck, when you often don't have a lot of mana floating around for these removal tools.
Yeah, it was decks like this, the Patron Warrior and the Dragon Warrior that we might be seeing some as well, and then Tempo Warrior later on. It was decks like that that really got Execute nerfed, you know? Like, control decks existed in the metagame for a long time, and no one really cared that Execute was 1 mana, you know? It wasn't really a matter of how cheap it was, it was just like, did they draw it, and can I pressure them to use it on a suboptimal target, right? It wasn't really a matter of mana efficiency. When decks started using it as a tempo tool, just say, I kill your guy for 1 mana and play 5 more mana's worth of stuff on turn 6, that's when it started to turn the corner of just being really overpowered.
Yeah, very similar to the BGH, right? Pre-nerf.
Right.
3 mana, kill a massive dude and play a dude yourself. But the board is just about being cleared up for JustSaying here. Dane just with that juggler left, but he is on the advantage. Mr. Tyrion off the top, going to be dropped down, and this is just going from bad to worse. JustSaying's face just sums it up. As now suddenly that Death Spite, a little bit late to the party, isn't really going to get much done. He can drop Sludge Belcher and the Corsair, though, with the Death Spite equipped, but where does he go from there?
It's a great question, and the answer to that is I don't really know. He just hasn't really found any gas this game. He hasn't done anything that Patron Warrior really wants to do in terms of generating a huge board, or even just having like a nutty Battle Rage turn to fill up with resources. He just had to try and push early with Frothings, and that Colhammer on turn 3 was really the difference, just because of how efficiently it answered his initial Frothing. He's been behind ever since then. Dane just holding on to the lead, and he's got so much tempo advantage here that he'll quite easily be able to find a turn to drop that lay on hands and pick up some more resources if he needs them later.
Yeah, this is it, right? There's heal, there's clear, there's the card draw on top of the lay on hands, of course. Dane has everything he needs to actually just close this game out, whereas Saiyan is working out how he holds on as opposed to wins, which is
Yeah.
never a great spot to be in. And I agree. I was literally going to ask, imagine if that Cog Hammer was any other card in the deck.
Right.
Like, the game looks very different from that point. So it's like Saints just sounds bad, but just doing the best he can.
Well, I was
to
gonna
hold on
say,
right now.
as you started talking, I like took a look at the hand and tried to actually sit and work out the play, and very quickly I was like, he can play every card in his hand this turn. Like, is there really anything better than doing that? And it seems very apparent that the answer is no. So Saiyan just makes the all-in push here, trying to leverage his last few points of health into some kind of board advantage, but with the resources available to Dane, like, he should be able to deal with this counter push very, very easily.
Yeah, and look, even this, the Loyal Hand's going on to Tyrion to get a positive trade and kind of negate the ultimate power of the Sludge Belcher. We see a Grand Tournament card there going to Dane's hand, the Murloc Knight, probably along with Thunderbluff, as you mentioned earlier, the only other Inspire card that had any true lasting impact on the game, I would say. Just because being able to chain those Murlocs was so powerful later on in the Paladin game.
All right, there's a rag. Sorry, I just looked at chat and they've clearly just seen the Bolf graphic on the delay that's going on right now.
The one before was Mage Domo, so clearly.
Right, and like everyone in chat's just like Bolf pog champing, and then there's just that one guy that doesn't get it. Just like, what? Bolf's not a key card. What are you doing? Never change Twitch chat. You're great.
So again, just so you know, Sane can play all the cards in his hand this turn.
Yeah, good.
And it seems like a good play to me.
10 out of 10.
I think, to be in some level of seriousness, is Sane's working out exactly where he wants to put this weapon.
What now?
And to clear the board, he'd have to trade in and go, say, face with the weapon if he puts the minions into the minions.
Mm-hmm.
But he's probably just working out, okay, if I swing, take 6, which is what he's going to do. This leaves the taunt on the board as well. The juggler still goes away, and I can push 8 for Ragnaros. And then suddenly the questions on Dane is, can he either deal with Ragnaros or kill me fast enough?
Yeah, it's pretty simple to do though, right? He's dead just to very, very small things here. At least like Consecration alone would let him push the damage through to face at this point. You see Dane has the equality as well to take care of that Ragnaros. So the answer to your question, Raven, is a very resounding yes. He can deal with this quite comfortably. And then your boy Murloc Knight is going to hit the board. Man, I missed this card. What a beautiful little monster.
Yeah, it's actually... Let's go. There's Patron. We did get to see it. Sorry. So is the Patron going to pull anything big off this game? Unfortunately not, as Dane takes the loss there, and Dane takes the win straight off the bat with that Paladin. And it wasn't, the form of secret Paladin we maybe expected. It was much more of just mid-range Paladin more than anything else. But with cards like Lothar, with Boom, Tyrion, of course, still knocking around. But there's actually a lot of ways you can just play mid-range Paladin. I think because we've not had it for so long, we kind of laugh at the idea of a mid-range Paladin deck. But yeah, there were pretty good mid-range cards back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it was up there. People played it just as an alternative to Secret Paladin even back then. And I really do think that like part of that reasoning comes down to the fear of Secret Paladin getting targeted, because we saw at the high-level metagame when these expansions were live that was a lot of high legend ladder and competitive tournaments. It was, can I dodge getting targeted with my Secret Paladin? Can I play it at the right times on ladder? Can I find a spot in the right lineup for it so that the decks that beat it don't just force it out? As you can see, some of the nerfs here. Ignore all of those, apart from that one at the top, second from the right, Warsong Commander. That is the greatest crime to ever strike the game of Hearthstone.
I don't know. I'm looking at Starving Buzzard for me, so I mean,
fair enough. All right. We both got our axe to grind, I guess. But
yeah, this is the moment where we're like, Blizzard, come on. All the others seem reasonably okay to me.
Raven, but we haven't got a Fiery War Axe to grind because that got nerfed as well.
Not for another turn.
Exactly. But yeah, what else we got on here? Abusive Sergeant, Lepanome on the previous screen that we saw as well, really like reducing the power of what Zoo would be able to do in comparison to like the real times of the deck.
Yeah, and also Druid just getting absolutely dumpstered as well. Force of Nature, Ancient of Law, and Keeper of the Grove all suffering at some one point or another, and all those hits really made the point of this current meta that the players are playing in. Like, what does Druid even play? Which is why we're not even seeing anyone play Druid so far.
Yeah, I did wonder, like, I don't know exactly when Egg Druid actually appeared, like when Jackie like came up
Get
with
Jackie
it.
on the phone.
Right, but I guess we can ask him if we get to interview him during this event. But like, it's possible with the cards that we have now, right? I can't actually exactly remember what expansion he first started playing it, but there's Nerubian Egg, there's Dragon Egg, there's Living Roots, there's all kinds of token cards available. So
I think it was the next expansion, Gadget Zen, because of Mark of the Lotus was a big deal,
Makes
right?
sense.
The
Sure.
+1 for 1 mana, in case anyone's forgot already. But let's have a look at what decks are left. Priest and Mage for Dane, and the Priest is Warrior again, and Warlock for Saying. We didn't maybe mention at the start, but this is Conquest, but just played in a format that has a limited set of cards that are playable for these players.
Yep. So Priest has picked up the win for Dane, leaving his Paladin's picked up the win, leaving Priest and Mage to win with. Just saying, we saw his Warrior is Patron Warrior. The Priest and Warlock are unknown, and honestly, that Warlock is probably the big X factor at this point because, as I alluded to at the start, like Zoo was viable at this point, Pure Handlock was viable at this point, Demon Warlock was viable at this point, and I believe this was about the time that Purple took the world by storm with Malagos Druid as well, right?
DreamHack Winter 2016, was it?
That sounds right to me, yeah.
Yeah, I remember it very well. But this was, I think, for me, and I actually talked about this the other day with a few people, that this was always the issue when you run ladder and you queued against Warlock, right? What do you mull for? Like,
Right.
Because they're so different. But let's talk about Warlock a little bit later on, as we are going to go into Priest versus Priest, Light Bomb versus Wild Pyromancer. Let's have a look what's on the cards for these players. Blade Master at the top there for Dane. Just a steady combo with, say, Circle of Healing, for example, whereas Saiyan looks like he's going for that Dragon Toolkit. And the card often known as the Dragon Battery is the Twilight Whelp. Is in the opening hand.
Yeah.
He needed to proc those effects, and Twilight Whelp, other than on turn 1 or 2, was a pretty, weak powered card.
Yeah. Petition to rebrand. No more Duracell Bunny. You would just get the Duracell Twilight Whelp. That's your new ad campaign right there.
Oh god, Zombie Chan.
Other batteries are available.
Twilight Whelp's going to come down now, though, and instead of Whelp being stuck in hand late game and just proccing dragons, that's Ysera's role up until later on. So
yeah. So yeah, this is like pure control priest from Dane. Again, like I'm relying on my memory, which is never really a great factor. But I think this was about the time where a particular control priest list came out that everyone really referred to as Chinese priest at this point. Because we didn't really have much exposure to the China scene, and that was like one of the first decks that we knew came from a Chinese player that we started playing in the West as well. So it was just control priest, but everyone just kind of referred to it as China priest at the time, and it looks like that's kind of similar to what Dane is rocking here. Whereas, of course, just saying, obviously, based on the cards so far, is just jamming that dragon priest.
Yeah, I will say, I feel like as a whole we've got less inventive with names. Now it's like Shudderwock Shaman. Well, yeah, great. It's got the card in it. Like we're not making up fun names, so that's a challenge for everyone. To next time anyone builds a good deck, just release it with a funky name. That's all that matters. But getting back to this game, also this deck I believe was one of the decks at Ness, very similar to with one Insomnia off the back of, I believe, beating Dog in the finals. Right?
Dog in the finals, yep.
Oof, God, this is a nostalgia trip.
I know, it just gives you all the feels, right? I don't even really want to talk about the game. I just want to reminisce with you, Raven.
The chat can follow along with the game. They've got eyes. We can just be like, do you remember when?
On my rose-tinted nostalgia goggles, just everything was better back then, Raven. It just was. It's just a fact.
Oh, there are some things I won't say, but yes, a lot of things were better overall, apart from my casting, which was definitely a lot worse. Shrinkmaster, I do actually almost forgot about that card, but often being used just as the combo activator for the Cabal Shadow Priest a lot of the time as well.
Looks like saying here, just going to go for the heal play, get some value out of his Twilight Guardian as well as drawing a card. And he has Dark Cultist here, which is just great. Such a great like meat and potatoes minion. You can just drop it on basically any board state and it will do something for you. But now with the pickup of the Velen's Chosen, he's got some options, but does continue to just curve out with the Dark Cultist, which makes sense to me.
Kind of funny that Priest 3-mana 3/4s that give health have always been good. Dark Cultist, and then its distant cousin, Cabal thingy. Was it Cabal thingy? Shadow
Cabal
Priest?
thingy.
What was it? Oh my god, it was actually recent. I forgot what it's called. 3-mana 3/4 plus 3 health.
Talon Priest.
That's it, Cabal Talon Priest.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a good card.
Yeah, we got there. We struggled to the point.
Between us, we managed it.
Was it reynad? I think it was reynad who, like, when Dark Cultist first got revealed, said that like this card was going to break Hearthstone and it was like the most broken card ever and nothing would ever be this strong. Oh, how naive and simple we were back then.
We didn't understand power creep.
Yeah.
We didn't understand many things about Hearthstone. But
The
still.
Cabal jacking the Cleric is one of the key interactions in this matchup, though it always has been. It's just such a nice target before like really big, beefy, 2-attack minions came along a little bit later, unless you're going to pair it with that Shrinkmeister, which of course is one of the key combos. Cleric is just one of the easiest tools to be able to take away and get value from, so no surprise to see him going for it. But speaking of value, that is a pretty high value Velen's Chosen in that spot.
I did wonder there for a second whether there was ever an idea to coin Shrinkmeister and then Cabal the Cabal to get like a super board for Saiyan. But he is holding the coin, which means he can just plop Ysera onto the board next turn. So, both have different roles, but I feel like just a complete board switch would be pretty powerful, especially because the Cabals dodge light bombs.
Yeah, I like it. I definitely like holding the coin for Ysera in this position, just, based on the matchup you're on. Saiyan had a little bit of an awkward decision on the previous turn about what he wanted to heal. One heal, which is the one he did, was better against Light Bomb specifically, whereas leaving a minion at 1 health, as he chose to do, was worse against Pyromancer stuff, which is what Dane ended up having. But yeah, coin Ysera and put even more health on it with the Dark Cultist potentially is a pretty nice looking play. Emerald Drake is fine, just as a decent chunky minion. And now Dane does have a double circle along with that Organized Soul Freeze.
Also, though, thinking ahead, we talked about Cabal and Shrinkmeister combos. Ysera is a pretty good target for those as well, so Saiyan has that sat locked, loaded, and ready to go if Dane even thinks about dropping that Ysera, and that is often a board swing that you cannot really do much about as Priest in this current historic period, because there is no Psychic Scream that you can just say, no, I'll deal with you guys later. It's like, no, well, guess what? Light Bomb doesn't get the job done. Holy Nova doesn't get the job done, and double Ysera is going to equal death for Dane if that happens.
And I think that's the big counter argument to the play you were suggesting last turn, right? It's like this way, Saiyan got to coin Ysera, so he got to go first with his Ysera.
Look at Saiyan's face!
He held on to these 2 cards that you're going to see come down and just crush this game state right now, as opposed to using them on a 4/5, which looked reasonable. But yeah, it's not a 4/12, and thank you very much. Let me change your mind about dropping that Ysera on the board, Dane. 1-1. Let's go. Game 3.
Yeah, and Saiyan very intelligently just set up a checkmate scenario there, right? Because look at Dane. You cannot even really blame Dane for this, and say, oh, he shouldn't have played Ysera. So if he drops True Silver like he's about to, if he did that last turn, well, True Silver, True Heart. Just to card True Heart, just to card True Silver. Then it just dies. Yeah, you get the hero power, but it just dies.
Yeah.
And Saiyan still has a Ysera on the board. And then Dane's in the same position. So couldn't really get a good way to deal with the board right now. Dane, as well of an answer as he could get, which was a dream, just to throw Ysera number 2 back in Saiyan's hand. But still, it's looking pretty rough.
Yeah, the only option Dane had on the previous turn, instead of just dropping Ysera, was to go for a clear turn with the Orkanai and a lot of his resources. He could have got there just to kill 1 Ysera. It would have been a big investment. But yeah, I like really remembering back as much as I do about these kind of matchups, Priest Mirrors, like those super high value steals with the Shrinkmaster Cabal were often like the big break points of the matchups, I believe. And you're seeing that right now. And if it's saying, I just don't mind Ysera Dream right back. Like, you can just Dream this 6-3. It's not a big deal. Just not have to deal with it.
Could even just trade Shrinkmeister into it. Who cares at this point? Like, I don't think it's going to make a massive impact on the game if he loses a 3-2 right now.
Well, do you need a bunch of dreams in your hand? Is my counter argument to that? I don't know.
Maybe you want to troll and just keep replaying your Yseras every turn.
Yeah.
Attack, Dream Ysera, replay Ysera, pass.
Yeah.
It's going to try to mentally break
the double
Dane.
circle. And actually, that decision not to dream is actually a big break point here, because it's not just losing the Shrinkmeister. He actually had to trade an extra minion, right? Like, he could have chosen to do it like dream one minion and then trade the Shrinkmeister into the zombie chow instead of value trading, keep more health on his big dragons, and then he wouldn't have been vulnerable to that double circle ping play, because he would have had both Yseras above 10 health.
Yeah, I'm going pretty deep right now, Saul, but I did joke a little bit, but was it ever a reason just to completely play around everything to dream the weaker Ysera back into his hand? Because the Dane has like no cards, right?
I think dreaming the Justicar and then trading the 3-2 in the zombie chow plays around everything. I think that was the safest play he could have done. It's not as funny. No, that is.
I think that's the point I'm going for right now.
Okay, sure.
Okay, well, Dane's going to try and fight back with this Blade Master. Can get some level of card draw with this cleric, but again, just 2 dreams, so Zane can just say no. He has Valen's Chosen now in hand. There's still Light Bomb for emergencies, and most importantly, I think, a Nova and a Drake just for that extra push as well.
Yeah. I don't fault Saiyan for the play he made at all either, by the way. Like, that's 100% caster vision call. Like, you can see from Saiyan's position, like, the worst possible thing happened to him. Like, the one thing that could kill both his Yseras happened, and he's still winning the game comfortably, right? So there was no need for him to play around it in that spot.
Twilight Guardian is a card I genuinely miss. That card was awesome. It felt powerful, but not stupidly so, if that makes sense.
Sorry, which card?
Twilight Guardian. Dragon Tone.
Yeah. Twilight Guardian was it really like tied the dragon package together, right? Because the dragon decks had like the 3-drops with Blackwing Technician, they had the 5s with Corruptor, but they never had anything to like bridge that gap. And then when Twilight Guardian came out, like the curve was complete, basically, right?
Yeah, and
became very, very powerful.
And what they wanted in that spot was a defensive tool as well. So it really just ticked the box of saying, you know, I have my good 3-drop, my 5-drop's good at removal or burst damage, but then where's that just the thing that just solidifies the deck? And, you know, as you said, Guardian was the card there. Sylvanas gonna be dropped down now, and you know, there is a bit of a scary board, but Saiyan just has so much stuff, and most importantly, a second dream.
It just keeps
dreaming. You can just
throw
it back.
It's a third dream. Dane just doesn't get to play
actually,
minions this game.
Dane already shook his head at dream number 2. Let's see his visual response at dream number 3. So I can't imagine a world where you want to kill this Sylvanas right now.
It does have a lot of work to do before it can get through to a minion that kills it, but there's no reason to take that risk, right?
Yeah,
like
there we go.
Yeah, there's the head roll. Dane's having a good time. He's a nice guy. He knows what's up.
He plays wild. He must be used to this. Come on.
Yeah. But yeah, even though the Sylvanas like couldn't work itself on the board in that position, there's no reason to like not delay it for a turn, right? Like if he has to replay the Sylvanas now, well then there's still 2 more turns after that before it can do anything impactful. So, yep, Saiyan carrying off the back of various dreams, but it was that knowledge, even of a very old matchup, that really got him into that position, right? He understood the 2 things that were important. Playing Ysera as early as possible, so he held the coin for it, and then making sure you can steal any huge power play your opponent makes, so he held the Shrinkmaster Cabal for that. Like, basically, this side of his hand, with like the coin and those 2 cards, was untouched for the whole game, and he was just playing from over here as the cards that he drew. So I think it was very well played from Sam.
I think that game as well just highlights that cards are as powerful as what the pool of cards is, basically, right? Because that Ysera play was only as powerful in game as it was because cards like Psychic Scream don't exist in this current period they're playing in. So those were the power plays, but now Ysera is just generally a bit weaker because of how the meta looks. Even cards like Vile Spine, for example, makes Ysera weaker. So it's kind of funny that just a card can be powerful in a vacuum, but a lot of the time it's you've got to view what the set looks like and how the cards interact with each other to see how truly powerful it can be at any given time.
think that's the first time I've noticed that Dane has like almost a full sleeve tattoo. It doesn't like looking at this shot now. It's just his face. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that would have a full arm sleeve, you know. But there it is. Bust
Still
out.
50-50, isn't it? Yeah. I think I actually know a lot of people that have tattoos that will start on an arm and only do that arm. You know what I mean, and not really cross over. So it might be that. Maybe that. Look, it's not the first time I've noticed that both these players are 1-1 now, and there's Priest, Mage on Dane's side, and then the Warrior and Warlock on Saint's side. Although there's a couple of crossed over classes, kind of funny that these players, you know, just have different decks to this format. So it's not like, oh well, obviously you bring these 4 decks every time. Do you know what I mean? There's still a lot of tinkering going on in this Warlock versus the Mage.
Tempo Mage from Dane, and we saw Nexus champion Sarad in the opening hand. So looks like this is the kind of build that, again, I'm going to go out on a limb here, I believe Hot Form made the really deep run with in America's Championship way back when. Not many other people were playing that Nexus champion Sarad tech, but he was one of the few people that really showed a lot of success with it.
Yeah, what you don't know as well is Dane's recording this game for his YouTube channel, and Nexus Sarad creates some good, funny moments.
That's true, yeah. If you're a YouTube content creator, you've got to live for the memes, right? It's just how it goes.
Oh, Haunted Creeper, Knife Juggler. Those were the days. And this looks to be the Demon Zoo from Saiyan, which is
right. He
again,
mulled away a Void Caller, right?
Yeah, Void Caller. So again, when Mal'Ganis is knocking around, these decks just go absolutely loopy. You know, Void Caller, the original Skull of Manari, being able to pull out those demons.
Yep. So now Dane has a pretty drastic decision to make here. Ping can pretty much contest this board quite nicely on its own. And I feel like in this matchup, like a 3-2 Sorcerer's Apprentice really doesn't have a great effect on the board. When it can have a big effect is like that one big swing turn that you need, like alongside the Flame Waker as well. So raw Sorcerer's Apprentice is my least favorite play this turn. I think the play is between coining Flame Waker, as Dane's looking at doing, and then just pinging the 1-2 with his Mana Worm.
I like the coin on the Flame Waker, to be honest. You get to be able to take this Void Walker out anyway, and suddenly it's a reasonable ask from Saiyan to actually try and kill this Flame Waker. But hey, Power of Whelming's a pretty good card.
Knife Juggler, also a pretty good card.
When our powers combine with Creeper, also a pretty good card. He gets it.
How do you feel about Azure Drake?
It's a pretty good card.
Okay.
What about Lothar?
A pretty good card.
What about Arcane Missiles?
All right, really, really think about this one. Flame Strike.
It's a pretty good card.
Okay, good.
I did actually want to talk about Flame Strike, so a very good moment there, Salt, is this looks like a Tempo Mage that I believe came a little bit later than where we're playing right now, but the RDU played in the Shaman meta of DreamHack Winter, I believe. Was it Summer?
Oh, dude, I gave him so much crap for playing double Flame Strike in his deck, and then he just won the tournament.
Convincingly so, I think, is the key. Here, RDU brought Tempo Mage with double Flame Strike, and we were like, what? And then he just laughed at everyone as he killed them with Flame Strikes. And we were like, okay, I guess you're just correct. And as RDU often is about these things.
That was a long time after this, though, right?
There was the Shaman meta, right, with Trog. It was the Shaman matchups.
Yeah, you're right.
So it was the this was summer-ish, and I think it was the winter when Gadget Zen came out, right?
Well, anyway, Dane is not actually doing too badly here. He did, despite that big power overwhelming swing turn, he's contesting evenly for now, and now he's just curving into like Drake stuff, which, you know, you're always happy pretty much to drop an Azure Drake on turn 5 if you're allowed to, and not playing standard feels bad. But yeah, from there, like, he's picked up second Flame Waker as well, which is huge, because that's the big danger of dropping the first one so early, right? There's 2 ways to play this matchup from the Tempo Mage side. You either curve out as aggressively as you can and just try and fight with minions, or you sit back and stall for a few turns, and then you save for like a big Flame Waker, coin Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles kind of turn, and just fully swing the board. But hey, if we know anything about old Hearthstone, it's that implosioning an Azure Drake defined the entire metagame.
I really wanted him to just use that implosion right there and just slam the Drake for 4 and then one emote to Dane's face, and then that would just be perfect for me. And also kind of a funny matchup, actually, because at this point, or maybe the turn previous, as this is looking really good for Saiyan now, but the turn previous was very much representative of each archetype, that JustSaying Zoo gets ahead by having minions mainly that just are slightly bigger than everyone else's or get slightly more done in that value. And then Dane's has spells that get a lot more done than they should in terms of, you look at Flame Cannon, the Flame Waker combined with cheap spells, getting all those shotgun hits off. And it's just kind of funny. But now with that egg on the board, that's kind of a defensive mechanism versus Flame Cannon, which was an interaction we saw quite a lot as well. The old egg and the Flame Cannon.
Yeah, it's been a very good matchup for Zoo, like kind of for that reason for quite a while. Just because they're able to flood the board so effectively that, yeah, whatever your tool is in Tempo Mage, they're often random targeted. You know, you look at Flame Waker, you look at Arcane Missiles, you look at Cinderstorm now, and of course Flame Cannon. So having like undesirable targets on the board made life very difficult for the Tempo Mage. And yeah, you've got Nerubian Egg, you've got Haunted Creeper, you've got all kinds of madness.
Imp Gang Boss.
Imp Gang Boss, yeah. Not to mention just loading up a board and then dropping Lotheb on it, which is very often GG on its own. So this was always a good matchup for the Zoo, but Tempo Mage had game, and its game pretty much came down to that one card we saw in the key graphic and we see in hand for Dane right now, and that's Flame Waker. That's pretty much like where their swing turns came from.
What's really funny now is Saiyan expecting Flame Strike, or does he implosion his own egg? Is he even bothered about finishing the game that quickly with Leroy and Direwolf on board? I don't know. It just feels kind of weird to just drop a Direwolf with 7 mana.
I think it's fine. I think implosioning your own egg is kind of a risk you don't need to take. You've seen your opponent's hand isn't like super explosive, right? So things like Flame Strike have to be on your radar. Things like saving for a big Flame Waker turn have to be on your radar as well. But actually, yeah, I didn't even really think about this. Too busy talking to think. Story of my life. But Leroy jamming and just using the egg to trade into a 1/2 is very nice here because he's still protected against Flame Strike this way. Even if the other Whelp trades back, it's not enough to pop the egg. It's actually a really nice catch from Saiyan. I like this play a lot.
Saiyan's pretty good at Hearthstone.
He is. He's an extremely good player. I mean, one of the very, very best players that hasn't had a big win yet, as far as I'm aware. Am I selling him short there? Does he won something big? No, I'm doubting myself now that I said that.
My respect, Sol. That's what he's won that's big.
Good enough.
You're in a good spot when doubling implosion is bad in hand because there are no targets for it. That's when you know you're feeling okay. And Dane, I don't know if he has the tools to dig himself out here. He's only leaving 4 power on the board now after that Flame Strike. But how does he catch up? That's. Do you remember this feeling, Sol? Of like, okay, I think over the next 2, Dr. Boom.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't have boom feeling.
Yeah,
I'm intimately familiar with that feeling, Raven.
Flame Waker and Boombot's just made everything funny to me, unless I was playing the game. But
So
when I
he
was commentating the game,
Hang on, he needs to Arcane Intellect into like exactly Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles or something similar, and then still have an absolute miracle happen to get out of this.
just gonna go Fireball. He's technically not dead.
Sure.
Even if both went face, he was alive on board, which is a lot of the time all you can play for in a spot.
But
as
yeah,
rough as
both
this.
went face for less than 3 total, yeah. I just feel he is so far behind in that spot that that might have been the turn just to make something incredibly low percentage happen, just to be in a better spot. Because like, what's the plan now, right? Like coming back to reload again.
I'd be surprised if Imp Gang Boss doesn't come down because it is just sturdy versus any either board cleared, removal. It's going to start summoning those imps, or at worst, leave 1 imp on the board. And if your opponent Flame Strikes pings,
He has Mirror Image as well. I like the AI play even more last turn now.
are you getting it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, none of this feels as good because of the Imp Gang Boss on the board, making everything awkward right now. With the ping, he does hold on a little. Oh wait, with Argus and Wolf, it's game, right?
Yeah, he's dead to basically any buff in this spot, but he's alive on board, so might as well just play it out.
It was technically 2 buffs though, right?
Right, yeah, with the ping as well, taking care of another 1/1. He needed to double buff, yeah. But you know, there was like ways around that as well. You can like
implosion
one of the get through. So yeah, it didn't ask much from a zoo that was as powerful as zoo was back then to be able to push through at that point. But yeah, very clean win. It was a good matchup for Saiyan. But he did what he needed to do. He played around the key removal turns. He drew Lotheb. He drew Boom. He curved out very nicely. GG.
Yeah, well, GVG, if you want to talk about the Boom players.
5 out of 10.
It's the best. I thought my grade only went up to 5 souls, so I'm doing great so far. Just saying, with the warrior left now in the series, Dane, you're looking extremely impressive over the past 2 weeks of this tournament, but this week might be the one he falls. Saying it needs to take a win with this patron warrior right now, and Dane still has his priest and has his mage, so that's control priest and the tempo mage versus this warrior. And I feel like against at least the mage, I feel like Shane can get this done.
I definitely think so, yeah. And one of the big reasons why you would perhaps want to include Flamestrike in your tempo mage in this particular metagame is if you're expecting people to bring the patron warrior, right? So that puts his tempo mage in a nice position to do it. I will say that, like, I played a ton of Patron back in the day, and I found myself losing to Tempo Mage more often by them just curving out. Like, I couldn't kill a Mana Worm, I couldn't kill a Flame Waker, and they just murdered me. I think Flame Strike, if you're a smart Patron player, can definitely be navigated and played around. I think having like a more aggressive curve was perhaps the way to go, but we'll see if the Flame Strike pays dividends for Dane, especially since Saiyan already saw it, right? Like that's
oh, sure. Yeah, that is a big deal. I think I agree in general as well. Because of cards like Armor Smith, you can just run them out, right? You know, you can actually gain the armor. It's less similar to current what people try to call tempo mage right now, but it's actually just aggro mage, where, you know, a Luneth plus glyphs could just go way too fast for anyone to keep up with. Like, Patron could just gain a ton of armor with the whirlwind effects to actually clear the board. Is that you just end up don't having enough damage to actually get the job done.
Yeah, this is Tempo Mage back when it was a true tempo deck. It had cheap plays that swung board states. It's kind of the definition of a tempo deck. It had Arcane Blast, it had Sorcerer's Apprentice discounting all your spells, it had Flame Waker creating huge swings. But yeah, we'll get into that when we need to, if we do even need to, because this is a very promising looking hand from the young Saiyan right now.
Yeah, when you look at Patron, you want a couple of things. You want patrons, obviously.
No way!
That's probably number 2 card in the deck.
Yeah.
And then card draw. And guess what? There is card draw, there are patrons, and there is a Death's Bite, even a Lotheb to make things a little bit tricky, to try and secure the board state and get enough damage to finish the game for Saiyan. But yeah, this is looking pretty good so far. This ghoul as an extra whirlwind effect as well is huge.
Dane does have Orkanite in hand, which is one of his big clearing options. Needs that Circle of Healing to be picked up alongside it to be able to answer a Patron wave. But I'll be curious exactly like how hard Saiyan chooses to go in here. With a reserve Patron to be able to reload, I expect the first one just gets dumped as early as possible, but they see Light Bomb picked up now for Dane, so he does have the first clear available, and that Harrison Jones is huge as well to deny some of the utility from the Death Spite, although it's still a pretty nice second activation of Death Spite, to be perfectly honest, just hitting the Acolyte of Pain.
It's also really funny where it's like, I negated the whirlwind effect from the Death Spite by playing this minion. This minion gets traded into by the ghoul to create the whirlwind effect that needed. Right. like, kind of playing around myself at this point. But still, 2 patrons on the board. And as you said, Saiyan having the second one means you can be a little bit more liberal with the first.
That's huge. Second AoE for Dane, meaning he now has the answer both times over to these 2 patron waves, unless Saiyan can create a situation where he forces out one of these AoEs in a non-patron situation, or can engineer one of those weird states where you make all your patrons and then you drop a frothing afterwards, right? So it's still at a 2/4. So you then play around the Light Bomb effect potentially. Yep. Was that interaction changed? I've got a little bug in the back of my head now that tells me that interaction was changed at some point. But I'll stick with it for now. I think that's
I'll stick with you sticking with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it makes sense to me, but when things make sense to me, it often means that I'm wrong.
Let me know in chat in like 10 minutes whether that got changed or not. Thanks, chat.
I'm sure we'll find out and get told how bad we are.
Yeah.
That's fine. I was going to say, what tools does Sane have to actually win this game if you remove Patron? And I think we saw Grom in game 1 in his mulligan. So he does have Grom. He does have, cards like Corcoran Elite that we can see has those frothings that you mentioned, and there's still weapons in the deck as well, and Boom, yeah. So there is ways that Sane can get there, but honestly, Boom on 7. Boom on 7. There are ways that Dane can get there, but I think he just needs the right tools at the right time frame. This light bomb's really nice, but also just having the Justicar with the heal, having some removal extra, or maybe spot removal is going to be important, like Shadow with Death.
One of my favorite all-time quotes from one of the great legacy players of the UK Hearthstone scene, Mr. Lewis Blackout Spencer. We were debating whether, when the light bomb was released, whether or not it was how good exactly is it? And his assessment was, well, it 1-for-1's Dr. Boom, so it's a good card. It's hard to
this
argue
day,
with that.
I have no arguments with that.
Yeah.
Did preemptively get the Vol'jin on the board, though. Did you know the name of that card, Sol?
Vol'jin? Yeah. I remember it.
I just...
Yeah, most cards that actually got played, I still remember names of. It's just cards that didn't get played that I'll struggle with.
Just, is a sprinkling of lore, that card, that's all. So I just wondered if you'd remembered.
I'll sprinkle your lore.
After the stream. Can't steal a boom part. Maybe give some revenge.
It's happened a lot, honestly.
Yeah, it really did.
I'm not sure how I feel about it with Shrinkmeister in hand. There was still like a decent proactive play that turn with potentially Holy Champion coming down, but yeah, we'll see.
I think my question is, what are you realistically stealing that's going to make enough of an impact that a 4/5 and a boom bot doesn't?
Sludge Belcher, Corcoran. There's a couple of things.
I think Corcoran's pretty low value, to be honest. Versus just having the stuff on board right now.
Yeah.
Double Holy Champion as well.
Hard against it. It's just, when you're sat, we saw the effect of what that combo can do in the previous game, right? Yes. The Shrinkmeister Cabal combo. It's just game ending in the right spot. So I don't know.
Dane will want this Organized Soul Priest killed off pretty quick, so we can have the old double Holy Champion Circle of Healing lethal. Eat that, Frothing Berserkers.
Sane's gonna BR for one.
He's gonna battle royale.
Go on, do the jump. Okay, nice. Oh, Justicar for the burst damage with that.
For those you don't know, Hearthstone's was really releasing their battle royale mode in 2019.
Yeah, cool.
10 Hearthstone players got on the board.
One. Yeah.
Feels like it sometimes. Okay, so as you said, Justicar is gonna drop on the board, turning that hero power into quite the scary thing, actually. 2-mana deal force, pretty huge. And can Sane even be defensive enough right now? Oh yeah, the old Boombot hit Acolyte for one. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, this was a classic gambit from back in the day. You just kind of hope, but nope. The worst possible scenario happened. Sane just wanted the extra card draw there, didn't get it. Instead, he took 4 right in the mush. And now he's hurting. He's just digging. He's just digging through the deck. Picks up Grom. No Death Spite to go with that, to even really set up like a bursty win condition for himself. And a bursty win condition is going to be hard in itself with Justicar hero power in play now. So this is looking like a struggle.
How many fingers?
He does have Lothab, along with the Dread Corsair, just as some in terms of just minions that can pile up some damage, and then in a Rage Grom maybe, but that seems very difficult, especially now. Obviously, we see the Holy Champions come down 2 5/5s and a heal to full for Dane.
There's the Death Spite, which quite honestly could be the key to this still, even though it doesn't really set up the Grom win condition. It does allow him to make a Patron Lothab turn happen.
I'm just worried about whether he just dies soon.
I mean, he's dying very soon, yes.
Balance shows him plus Circle of Healing, and it's very scary. Oh, unless he'll attack an Inner Rage, right? Never mind. He kills off the Holy Champion. I know how set he was on holding this Inner Rage, but yeah, this is correct. As I said, because you could just die next turn is the realistic problem there.
Yeah, the problem here is that Inner Rage was like his key to having a very explosive patron turn with alongside Lotheb, right? He wanted to make a bunch of patrons without spending mana so that he could then also drop Lotheb alongside and lock out the Light Bomb. He can't really do that too easily now with the Inner Raid, so I think exactly that's why he's considering loading up this unstable Ghoul now, so he can use that as his big push with the patrons on the following turn.
Yeah, he just needs to get something done. And the good thing now is, if the patrons get wiped by the Light Bomb, then there isn't a particularly great answer to just Ragnaros on board.
It's true.
That's a pretty good value engine in itself.
Yeah, we did see some Shadow of Deaths, I believe, previously from Dane,
Yes,
but not seeing them yet this game.
Ooh. Oh, where's Warsong Commander?
Dude, right?
I'm just looking at this board going, oh, damn. He could just be dead. Yeah. Oh, my God.
It's 100% fair.
It's so funny that like that one draw and you're like, oh my God, is he dead? And then you just wake up in a cold sweat and remember that Warsong Commander's been nerfed.
Yeah. If this hand was Emperor, I believe he's dead. I'm not sure he would have been dead without the Warsong plus the patrons plus the frothing. Maybe he would have done. I don't know. But anyway, this is the turn I was talking about extensively on the previous turn, where he sets up the Lotheb alongside those patrons just to try and make sure he gets that one turn of survival out of them. So it's great foresight, and this is everything that the last 3 turns has been about, right? You saw 3 turns ago, Saiyan just went digging hard with Battle Rage, didn't really do anything against the board. That's because he knew he had to pick up that Death Spite to make this happen. When he picked up the Death Spite, he used it to get control of the board, and then he preloaded that unstable Ghoul, predicting that this was going to be his turn on the follow-up, and then he made this turn happen with the Lotheb dropping down alongside patrons. Beautiful 3 turns from Saiyan, long-term planning. He's given himself a chance at least, and we'll see if Dane can dig his way out of this from here.
Yeah, and let's be honest, even without the Warsong craziness, this is a show of what this deck was about and why it was so difficult. You didn't play with 1 card or 2 cards. You played with like 8 potential cards at any given time that had to work together perfectly to get the win. And we'll see if it pays off. Shrinkmeister going down just to give the Blademaster a little bit of a trade, but look at how much damage is available right now. Can Rag just get lethal here? Probably not, right?
3, 6, 9, 12, 17, 18, 26 with Rag if Rag went face, so no.
Probably worth though, right?
I mean, your opponent has to light on this
bomb,
board anyway, right? It's
true.
unrealistic, and they've used both circles at this point, so yeah, Light Bomb is the only clear that's gonna make an impact. So suddenly my lack of knowledge as to whether this frothing interaction was changed or not becomes very relevant, because he could try and drop some 2/4 frothings at the end of his turn here to play around the Light Bomb. That is a realistic possibility, if it still works like that.
How does he deal with the board though? Is he just? I guess he can put a 3/3 into the Shrinkmeister, Lotheb, and the 1/4 into the Blademaster. Trade 1 patron to recover the 3/3.
Respawn 1 patron, still have room for his frothings. Yeah.
Oh. Or, because one thing that Sane I think wants to do at this point now, if we're talking Light Bomb, is actually just play Grom just flat, right? Just have him as a 4 attack and just let him keep hitting Dane in the face and negating that hero power.
Sure.
Oh, he's gonna go for the Rag. Pile on the pressure right now. And lottery. Oh, take that, Cleric. Oh, just in time.
Good mechanics from Dane, making sure he takes care of the Armorsmith first before dropping the old dank Light Bomb. And now Light of the Naru is just super clutch right here. Saiyan's deck as a whole is very low on removal right now, so even this Light Warden might just be able to carry from this point.
Well, that's the big deal now. This is going to draw out any sort of last-minute answers that Saiyan has, and that is Grom. And then Grom gets deathed, and then there's just 2 Frothing Berserkers churn on the board, and 1 Blademaster that can kill them both.
Yeah. Grom kill the Light Warden's probably the best play you got. Yeah, looks like that's what Saiyan's going to go for.
Yeah. Sol, have we been asked to cast this week? only to see Patron lose time and time again.
Just subject me to the ultimate torture, yeah. Saying gonna give it up, Dane with the fist bump, little chest pat, he's feeling it. And it's gonna come down now to our final matchup, which is the Tempo Mage, the Flame Strike packing Tempo Mage coming up against this Patron Warrior. So again, this is gonna be a very dynamic matchup. I think the matchups for Patron Warrior where you do have to play around AoE are the most interesting ones, especially in this like new form where you can't deal a bunch of burst damage. You have to stick a board. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the conclusion of this series.
Yeah, the good thing is the AoE is actually the 7 mana. It's similar to Light Bomb, is that Saying can set up, as we saw him do in the last game, that low theb, protection for 1 turn to try and get something done. But it's still, I don't know, I think this one's going to be a close one, but I feel this is the one that Saying's most likely to get the win with the Patron, because this deck does not have double death, double organized circle, double light bomb. That in itself is a massive removal that this mage does not have access to on the same level.
Right. Yeah, like Flame Cannon is decent removal, Frostbolt is decent removal, Fireball is decent removal. But outside then of the Flame Strike that Dane has teched in that wasn't mandatory to be played in the deck, things like Arcane Missiles, things like Flame Waker, those are a very high liability against, the Acolyte of Pain Grim Patron deck. So you definitely do have to make sure you're lining up those right removals at the right times and look for spots where you can safely use those cards, like Flame Waker, like Arcane Missiles, just to make sure that they get out there in a position where they're not just actively bad for you as the Tempo Mage.
Looks like the players are just going to get ready now to go into it. And this is the last game. As we said, Dane currently unbeaten so far as we're in week 3 of History of Hearthstone. It could continue his streak going 3-0, which would be very impressive. But Saying could lock him down as well. And Saying, do you like the Frothing Berserker here? Just because it can be pretty awkward to deal with. And he is on the coin, so we can get it out on 2. But it's just going to keep the Patron instead, and Dane didn't really have the flashiest opening hand either.
I like the Patron keep. I think this matchup is definitely one where you kept pieces of the turn 5 combo or the turn 4 combo. Turn 5 combo, where you keep Patron in a rage Deathbite pieces just to try and really explode against them very early, because Flame Strike is their one and only counterplay, and that still can't come out for a couple of turns if you go out early enough. And then especially if you can get like an Armor Smith behind that turn as well, that sets you up for the rest of the game. So I definitely like that keep, especially now, of course, like Fiery War Axe isn't really something that you can just pick up and play on turn 2 to smash through some mana worms and so on, which is something that we haven't really talked about, but actually has a big impact on this matchup as well, because your early game is a lot weaker now without that Fiery War Axe option. Yeah,
it's one thing that was stuck in my mind about, say, keeping the Frothing on coin, because it kind of is a Fiery War Axe in terms of just being able to deal with those extremely early threats. Because suddenly even just a base Frothing trade plus a Whirlwind effect afterwards is going to deal. But it's still not a very nice thing for the mana worm to go up against. Hydrologist now for 0 mana off the portal. I'm going to get him a secret as well. So Dane getting a lot of value from that card, but most importantly...
The runes! This is cheating! Hacking! No! Dane, banned! DQ!
The Flame Cannon
against the Patron deck! No! Bad Dane!
So a completely unbiased cast overall from us, as always. But yes, as we said
inquiry. Come on, can we get a ruling?
Unfortunately,
no, there is already a ruling. This is totally fair. Yeah. Random effects are random. We have no control over them. This is just going to happen.
But while Soto was crying like a small child, we did see the Flame Cannon onto the Frothing Berserker, which is pretty huge as well. Frothing Berserker was the early speed bump that Saying needed, but it just being dealt with one card was huge. And now Dane had that opening Mana Worm, Flame Waker, second Flame Waker, but most importantly, some spells next turn as well. And even this Runes can really get some work done.
I will want to ask if we do get to interview Dane, if he ends up winning the series. I do want to ask him if the strength of his lineup against Patron Warrior was a deliberate thing. Whether that was the deck he really came into this week targeting. Because Control Priest, when in a week where all the dragons appeared to make potentially Dragon Priest powerful, was Saying went with. Seems like a kind of a strange decision in isolation, but maybe he just wanted all of those extra clears available to him to be able to be strong against the Patron Warriors. You see that again with like Flame Strike teched into his Tempo Mage.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And also I wonder, if anyone's looking at the history of each player to see what they played in each meta, because I believe Saiyan liked himself some Patron, if my memory serves. Because you'd bring Patron to this, right? Just to play.
I mean, I probably would end up bringing it just for like the fun factor of playing Patron in tournament again. But like, I don't know if it's one of the 4 best decks you can bring without Warsong Commander. Like, I'm really not sure.
See, so that's where I'd get you. I'd be like, Sol's definitely bringing Patron. Where are my high AOE clears?
Yeah, right.
And look, this might just be too much right now. This second Flame Waker, Ellie as well to lock out the weapon. It's all going wrong. There's a Fireball and the Runes in hand, and it's just simply the power of just Azure Drake being a good card, as we discussed earlier. Saiyan might just not get there.
And this is what I said coming into this as well, which is, my experience with like losing to Tempo Mage is not, oh no, they flame struck my board. It's they beat me up very early with like an aggressive curve. You see, that's exactly what's happening now. Dane giving the little grin. I think he feels like he's got it locked up.
Also, as well, we've not seen Emperor, right?
For Saiyan, no, I don't think he's playing it.
Right, because although it might, again, with the no big singular combos to OTK, for example, might not be the heaviest impact card, but without getting, like, look at the hand size for Saiyan, it's never really been a massive issue throughout most of the games he's played. If any of this was cheaper, then maybe he could get more work done, but not in this specific situation, of course. I'm not saying it would have won in the game, but just something to think about in terms of deck building overall.
Yep. Well, 6 on board, 7 from hand. The explosive runes wasn't even needed, so I retract my statement about Dane cheating.
Nah, I wanted him to play it.
He's a good guy. He's all right. He can chill, and I'm sure we'll get to talk to him in a little bit about what his strategy was. But yeah, Saiyan just could not get that Patron Warrior over the line. I'm really looking forward to finding out from Dane whether that was a deliberate consideration on his part to really try and freeze that deck out of the metagame.
Yeah, it's just a weird one as well, because we saw such a lower power level from what we recall from Patron Warrior, right? Because there was no Armor Smith Whirlwind's turn, to gain like 20 armor or something, like, something crazy that is another way to outlast some decks, open yourself up some more opportunities, because you just make the game go longer. You kind of put people off with some AoE because you're saying, well, if you AoE, you want to kill this Armor Smith first. But doesn't matter. Dane takes it 3-0 now in the History of Hearthstone tournament in week number 3. Dane unbeaten, Saiyan now a 1-2 record, taking his second loss. So Dane, honestly, looking at how it's looking so far, I think he might be on the path to just take this whole thing and kind of surprise a lot of people. Yeah,
something interesting that we were talking about beforehand as well, as we are joined by Dane, it appears.
Hey,
welcome,
Dane.
Buddy. Is
hey, gents.
It's a couple of weeks still, or I believe next week, we actually kind of go into like a true wild format where like the rotations have happened in the history of Hearthstone. So that was the prediction, like, well, Dane will come into his own when we see that wild format. Like, why have you been crushing it so hard in these first 3 weeks as well?
I've still got a bit of an advantage. Like, going into this week, I knew that Patron Warrior wasn't very good, so I didn't really fancy bringing that. Because I've played it quite a bit in WoW before, and the lack of, Warsong Commander, and it just hurts the deck too much. Like, it used to be an auto loss when you used to play against Paladin, but now Paladin can just crush the Patron Warrior pretty easily.
Okay, and what did you Oh, go on.
So I did want to ask, like, was the anti-patron thing like a deliberate strategy? Did you come in targeting Patron Warrior? Because your decks overall were quite strong against Patron.
Yeah, well, I thought it'd be more like the dragon kind of warrior. You remember you had like Alex Strauss's champion and all the powerful dragons. I was expecting that, really. So I was thinking mid-range Paladin will do quite well. Like Control Priest will probably do quite well against it. But luckily, it targets kind of like mid-range and aggressive warrior decks.
Okay, and are you once we do move on to the next couple of weeks, when it opens up a little bit more, maybe to more what you used to play in of recent times, are you just feeling progressively more confident as you're currently 3-0 so far?
I mean, I've got a few like tricks up my sleeve for LOE and stuff like that. I'm feeling a little bit more confident as the weeks go on, more and more. I'm just trying to jog my memory of what was popular. At this stage in like the expansions, but yeah, pretty happy the way it's turning out so far.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, congratulations on the win. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. And good luck in the
Cheers.
rest of the tournament, mate.
See you later. Thanks very much.
Bye. Okay, so looking at what we've got right now, just to give you a reminder of the overall format of the tournament, week 1 was classic, and every week from there, we're adding more expansions to what is playable for these players. We see Dane there looking pretty confident so far, but as the weeks open up, as you mentioned, Sol, the actual rotation that happened at that given time is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, it's where we roll the dice and create the alternate timeline, right? Because come week 4, it's going to be a very strange metagame. It's not quite going to be that representation of what we had, because all the expansions are going to be thrown into the mix, which in the natural timeline, when Whisper of the Old Gods hit, suddenly a bunch of cards rotated out as well. So that's what I mean when I say it's like a true wild format at that point, because all of those cards can still be played together. And technically, that's where Dane, the wild specialist, should have his edge. But turns out his edge is everywhere. He's just crushing it right now. He'll finish this week as one of only 2 players with a perfect record.
Yeah, will be funny as well if I just imagine now we hit the wild stage, so to speak, and he'll just lose every match. Like, what happened? But I believe we are going to show you what the next match we've got coming up is going to be, as I don't think there's going to be much downtime, as I believe the players are going to be pretty close to getting ready as and when. But yeah, this tournament as a whole has kind of been surprising that, and this is no disrespect whatsoever to Dane, but like a lot of the players who have been professional competitive players for years and years during these, the history of Hearthstone, so to speak, that they've not really been performing as well. But then we see certain players like Zalay saying, "Oh, I've been practicing a lot for this."
Yeah, the Zalay and Neriah are really the 2 players who, to me, looked like they'd put like a ton of work just into, divining their lineups and really coming up with like strong strategies, understanding the metagame of each individual week. And yeah, it showed in their results because they're both doing very well as well.
Yeah, I think we are just waiting on Sixo, just getting ready to make sure everything's okay and ready to go with the next match. But yeah, Patron Warrior, that's just kind of
all right, look, can we just drop it?
We've got it on the
wrecked,
screen
right?
again.
Jeez.
So someone just scribble Grim Patron out and just put Dane's face on it or something. Like,
just replace it with a fat L. That's all it needs.
Yeah, I do see it though, and it is something that's kind of interesting during the time we've had so far of this tournament. Is, for example, early weeks. Oh, Freeze Mage is so powerful, right? If everyone's playing Freeze Mage, do you just play a build that counters it? Because everyone has such strong opinions of what was powerful. We were talking about Secret Paladin, but how targetable it is. So is everyone even going to bring it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's exactly what Neriah did week 1. He targeted Handlock and Freeze Mage. Those were the 2 decks that he predicted everyone was going to play, and he was spot on, and he had a pretty easy week, really, just kind of marched through. As you see now, those TGT cards, rounding out the Dragon package with Twilight Guardian, Justicar Trueheart we've seen once or twice. Mysterious Challenger we haven't seen. Totem Golem, not quite yet for sure.
Wait till next week.
I would be surprised, but it wasn't until the Tunnel Trog really came along as well that was really able to stand up to the powerhouses of the metagame like Wolfram Shield.
Yeah, I would like some amendments to this. Key mechanics, just blank. Under the Grand Tournament.
Yeah, right.
Just key new mechanics maybe, but key, I'm not sure about that. But we'll see how it works out. Flame Jugger as well, kind of a more under the radar card. Just it was played now and again. It's just that extra point of damage. I think mainly when decks became very, very aggressive, such as Pirate Warrior in like the next rotation of the sets. But
I think much like we're seeing now as well with cards like Amani Berserker, Flame Juggler really started to come into play when a bunch of other 2-drops rotated with the Whisper of Old Gods expansion, right? Like you didn't have Haunted Creeper anymore, so suddenly everyone was looking at their decks like, well, what the hell do we play on 2 now? Like, how does
you telling me I don't put Haunted Creeper in every single deck, huh?
Right. So yeah, Flame Juggler really came out to play a little bit later on. Yeah, Jackie Chan is up and ready to go against Sixo. Jackie at a 0-2 record going into this. Sixo at 1-1. Jackie is packing a druid, ladies and gentlemen. So my theory craft might not have been too far off the mark here.
Sol's 2 minutes before the show theory craft.
Yeah, dude, I put the work in for this event.
Also, he's playing Shaman, which we again discussed wasn't necessarily that powerful. But my question was, is Totem Golem plus the Thunderbluff hero powers actually just, along with Bloodlust, enough? But let's get into it. Game number 1, Jackie versus Sixo of History of Hearthstone Week 3. And that was a, believe it or not, a card I completely forgot existed. Gormok the Impaler.
Yep.
Ooh, I remember that bad boy.
The absolute boy. Some people played it in Zoo a little bit to try and, you had implosion and stuff back then, so making that kind of big board state to activate Gormok was pretty easy. But yeah, it was fairly common in these kind of egg druidy builds as well. Looks like Sixo is packing the Patron Warrior as well, but it looked like Zayn did not have any Fiery War Axe in his deck. He might have been playing one and never drew it. I don't think we saw him exhaust his deck in any of those games, but it looked very much like he wasn't playing it. Sixo playing at least one in his version.
Yeah, and again, this is really funny to me, and something that is, one, amusing about the tournament, and two, also quite interesting, is that, you know, Sixo saying both high-end competitive players that were like putting out results during this meta, right? They both bring Patron Warrior because of how they remember Patron Warrior. Dane, who's played it like recently, it's like, oh yeah, Patron Warrior sucks because I played it and it sucks, you know, like right now. So it's kind of funny how players kind of maybe almost go for those rose-tinted, you know, glasses you were talking about, where you just remember how powerful something was, and really it's actually gone a little bit down in power level since then. Yes, Raven. Very good point.
Sorry, I know you seek my constant approval, Raven. I'll try and remember to make vague acknowledging noises.
I just thought you'd gone.
No,
I thought you just AFK'd me.
Sorry.
Like, okay.
Look, someone's playing Patron Warrior. I'm very interested in what the play is every turn, so I'm kind of just staring at hands more than, you know, engaging in regular caster banter with you, Raven. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I'll forgive you. This once.
I was just wondering, the load up on the Fiery War Axe on the previous turn is what I was kind of internally debating while not listening to what you were saying last turn. Because of course you generally, in theory, want to get Deathbite down as early as possible. That's kind of like conventional wisdom. But there's no real upside for Deathbite in hand just yet, right? There's no Acolyte to draw, there's no Battle Rage to go off, there's no Patron to activate. And so, yeah, looking back on it, I like Zixo's plan of being able to deal with that 4/4 over a couple of turns, because he knows there's no rush to activate this Deathbite just yet.
Yeah, and the second you leave the board alive for you know, longer than you need to, then suddenly Soul of the Forest becomes very, very scary.
Right. Mark of the Wild number 2 picked up now, so he can activate egg number 2 as well. Everything's come together quite nicely so far for Mr. Jackie Chan. I think Egg Druid was Egg Druid before Camel Hunter or after Camel Hunter in the line of like Jackie Chan memes?
I believe before.
Okay, so this was like the first real goofy ass deck that Jackie Chan came out with and like got well known for.
I remember meeting Jackie for the first time at Insomnia many years ago. He came up to me and I didn't have the depth of player knowledge I have now, right? In terms of just knowing as many players as I do, obviously, because it was back in the day. And Jackie was like, oh, hey, I'm Jackie. I was like, oh, hey, yeah, I think I've heard you. Like, yeah, Egg Druid. And I was like, oh, yeah, of course. And then that was literally, and I was like, right, I've got to go. It's like, yeah, no problem, just saying hi. And then that was the conversation.
Okay, yeah, so confirming. I Googled, Desert Camel is not until League of Explorers. So yeah, that kind of answers my question for me. But now, without the Soul of the Forest, Jackie doesn't really have a way of making like a really sick board that survives through a Deathbite here. It's kind of an issue.
It really is, and it's the breaking point in the deck, right? You just there were no other powerful things available at this moment in time. There's no living mana for the effectively, you know, the similar refill that Soul of the Forest gives you. So it really is just build a board. You either run away with it with the odd buff, or you get that Solar Forest and just say, my body's not going anywhere anytime soon.
So Sixo battle rages once and then fires off the execute, which indicates he's probably armoring. Yeah, the second battle rage was drawn off the first one, but you know, with this second charge of Deathbite ready to swing, there's a good chance that that battle rage can pick up some value, and you do want to be squeezing that armor in against these aggressive decks wherever you can, just because you know that 2 might be an extra turn, and then you're good to go.
What's ridiculous is Jackie's almost got lethal.
So he's got 3 plus 6 twice, and then 2, so 12, 15, 17. Wait, oh, he doesn't have the mana.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's not got the mana for the Hero Power and Living Roots. Yeah, but I like it now. There's something you learn very early on when cards like Savage Roar exist is, or at least what I like to do is get the value out of them, because next turn the minions might not even be there, and then you're rocking 2 dead cards in your hand.
Right.
And it's not like you can really think Sixo has a lot in hand to deal with this and to armor up, right? Because he's barely got any cards in himself. He's obviously going to get a good draw now, or more realistically an armor up this turn. But this is very, very scary. This is just going to be lethal. Yeah, Jackie
throws up the hands. Sixo actually could have he could have inner raged the Squire instead and had 1 less Patron on board, but then being able to swing face with the Deathbite to be able to clear it out, which would have given him that 1 extra health that he needed, which is probably something worth thinking about, right? Because there was cards being held, like Living Roots is obviously a card that's being played in the deck that you then play around with that option. Obviously easy for me to say. I'm staring at that Living Roots as the only card in hand, but you know, the 4 patrons didn't really threaten lethal in that spot. You know, you're still a long way off, and
there's still boom in hand, right? So if you survive,
right,
then you drop boom for lethal, because that with the patrons is enough.
Right. So on, it's something worth looking at. Sixo did play that turn very, very quickly, so I don't know if he even considered the range, but we'll see.
This sounds really bad, and maybe I'm completely off the mark, but we talked about the power of classes before we did this cast, you know, before we started the show, and we were both like, oh yeah, I think Druid's pretty bad. So is there a point that like maybe Sixo or the other players have gone, oh yeah, Druid's got nothing, and just forgot some of the cards that were available, like forgot Living Roots was around? I don't know.
I sat down here, you know, we did our test call, we did our setup call, and then like I looked at the matchups for like you said, like 2 minutes, and I was immediately just like, oh, Jackie Chan's gonna play Egg Druid, right? Like I'm pretty sure Sixo's put more than 2 minutes work into this. So.
And it was more just you know, a point for other players as well, not just that specific game,
right?
But in general, like, is there just potential that you just forget cards exist? I don't know. Pretty tough one. Not had to think about these cards for a while for most of these players. I will say as well, the last point on Jackie's Druid, Jeeves that we saw, which was his last draw before lethal anyway, was one of the cards that stressed me out the most when I played Wild for a little bit last year. And it was just like, wow, this card was way better than we thought it was. You know, back in the day, it was just providing that much card draw for an aggro deck. Right. It was ridiculous. Why wasn't I playing that in Hunter? Like, that's my question. Crazy.
Because it's a 1/4. I don't know. Like I think Hunter's probably like the one bad example of that, because like Hunter didn't aggro Hunter anyway. Like Face Hunter didn't need card draw, because you drew a 2-mana arcane shot every turn. You know, like you just keep pressing that and doing the job.
And they had quick shot, to be fair, at this moment in time. Anyway, let's move on. Jackie versus Sixo. Paladin for Jackie. Sixo still on the Warrior. And Sixo, again, we didn't see Shredder from Saiyan, right? In his Warrior?
Sorry, say again?
We didn't see the pilot Shredder in Saiyan's Patron?
I don't think so, no. No, we didn't.
Not say it's not there, of course, but...
He had Corcorons.
Oh, yeah. So maybe this, Sixo's just playing a more well-rounded version. Maybe not as aggressive or as all-in, but still. It's going to be going up against Jackie's what appears to be Secret Paladin now. Everyone will get their wish and relive this deck.
So poke the Smith and reshield. Yep, looks like the play.
2 games we've seen Paladin, we've seen this happen twice. It's a good play.
Coghammer's just so nutty, dude. It's such a good card.
This is the thing, right? Like, what does Sixo do now? Okay, coin Shredder. There's a secret live. Like, what's the secret? Do you know?
He has 0 information on that.
That's what I mean. It's just like, how do I even beat this mini bot? Never mind the rest of the deck.
Yep. If it's Noble Sack, that's a nightmare because he can't get through. If it's Redemption, that sucks because it's a mini bot and it comes back with Divine Shield. Yeah, problematic.
So it's probably not redemption now, right?
Because he hero powered, I would agree with you. Yeah.
Sixo can imagine that's not redemption. He's gonna whirlwind it.
Oh wow! Oh, that's Avenge.
Avenge, of course. Yeah. Oh, if Avenge was still a card in standard.
So the Whirlwind was actually good there for double reasons, right? Because it would have killed the Redemption, just got a 1/1 back instead of the mini bot. But then if it was Avenge, which it was, he then had a 50-50 of the Avenge going onto the mini bot, which would then have full health, right? And he just smacks the Shredder into it. Right. So that was definitely looked like the right sequencing for Sixo. He just got unlucky with where the buff went, perfectly honest.
See the Shredder die as well, drop a 2-drop, and for a second, my natural, memory went to Patient Assassin. Then I realized it can get any card. Only 2-drop at least, so it's actually the Jade dude.
It's the Jade.
It's going to be a 1/1 into a 1/1 because the Death Rattle gives it away, not the poison effect, of course. But for a second, when you saw the 1/1 stealth, you're like, okay, that's a pretty good drop from Shredder.
Well, speaking of good drops from Shredders.
You can get Shredder from a Shredder.
Yeah, you can get this Shredder from the bigger Sky Golem thing.
The bigger Sky Golem.
Piloted Sky Golem, is that what it's called?
Not a Shredder though, is it?
I guess.
You
win this round.
You up on that.
you are technically correct, which is
especially because honestly about 10 seconds ago I was like, he's gonna say that and then I'm gonna trick him with this and he's gonna go straight into it. He fell into my devious plan.
Got you baited super hard. Unlucky.
Played you like a fiddle.
Add that to the list of things we're doing after this call.
Well, I thought you were gonna say never talking about again. There he is. Who is he? None of your business. Mysterious Challenger drawn, and often when Mysterious Challenger is drawn and playable, you play that card, and you can even kind of make the full secrets, as you can play Competitive Spirit along with it.
Yeah, it depends how many copies of Comp Spirit he's playing, right? Because he can just play it afterwards, but it might, if he's playing 2, then he'll pull the other one as well. But no, it just looks like he's just playing 1.
Yeah, and I think that was the generally accepted list, right? Was the singular Comp Spirit, double Avenge, double Redemption, double Get Down.
Yeah, and then there was the list with like Zombie Chows as well that played less secrets even than that as well. Went less all in on that kind of strat.
Yeah, that was when people were really trying to just stop secret paladin working, right? You just play Zombie Chow because it's just a better overall early minion to beat up some of the more aggressive lists. But yeah, Jackie's just gonna take a win pretty straightforward, and guess what? Patron sucks. It's just
that was supposed to be the matchup as well. That was supposed to be the one
in this week.
Yeah, 0-4 at least. Yeah, 0-4. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and that's the matchup you used to be pretty happy with. Things would have to go. You would have to draw relatively badly with Patron, and they would have to like mini bot, into muster, into Mysterious Challenger to have that kind of power, game where you just stomp them, and it's just not there. Patron's just not got it anymore. And Jackie, it's gonna not be 0-2 potentially after this match now, as he's taking a 2-0 lead over Sixo. It's a lot of numbers in that
either way, he's not going to be 0-2 anymore, right? Let's be real.
That's true.
Yeah.
If we're going to be picky about this.
I mean, I owed you one, right? I have to. I'm that petty. I have to even the scoreboard as quickly as possible. So, But someone who has a much harder task equaling the scoreboard here is Sixo, and he has 3 decks now, potentially going up against this Mystery Shaman from Jackie Chan.
Yeah, I wonder what he's doing with it. I can't see anything outside of just Totem, Thunderbluff, maybe even Tuskar Totemic, and just say, I'm going to Bloodlust you at some point, because that was just a legitimate strategy for a long time. Is I'll just keep putting like light costed stuff onto the board, keep pressing hero power, and you have to fear Bloodlust every single time. But looking at the game and the hands as we go into it, Ancestral Knowledge and Lava Shot, is this aggro?
There's a Manatide Totem. We don't play Manatide Totem in Face Shaman.
He just likes drawing cards. You can draw 3 cards minimum with that hand.
All right.
I don't know. But Lava Shock and Ancestral Knowledge seem a little bit heavy. There's Hex, so maybe it is just mid-range with a couple of choice cards involved.
How many of the like super memey shaman cards were in the game at this point? Because there's what's it called? Crusher Shaman, right? Is that the name of it?
Oh,
like, Blade Master, Ancestral, and like all that kind of stuff. Like, is that what we're looking at?
Earth and Elemental.
Right.
Okay, there's Healing Wave. But there's Crackle! Jackie, what are you doing? Wait. Is he playing Malagos?
Oh.
With Emperor?
You might be right. Yeah, what's the name of that guy? Ancestors Call? Is that the name of it?
Ancestors Call for the 4-mana Pull a Minion?
Pull a Minion. Yeah, I think you've got it. I think you've spotted it, Raven.
Oh!
Yep, there it is.
God, I'm good. God, Soul. Remember the meta better? God.
Remember the meta, he says, about Ancestors Call Shaman.
You always wondered why I was always a lower rank than you, Soul. My deep knowledge of these decks is why.
Right, yeah. I tell you what, if this deck beats Patron Warrior as well, then my dumpster is on fire at this point. Like, I'm just out.
Just mic dropped. Gone. You'll disenchant your golden patrons from your collection.
I do still have full gold.
I know. I didn't even know that as a confirmed, but I was so confident that you had them. That was just off the top of my head.
Yeah, including of course the Warsong Commanders, which are level 60 priest. Oh no, Mission Venter was level 60 priest. No, never mind. Fun patron facts with Zuzzle. You have subscribed to Patron Facts. To unsubscribe, please reply. Press F in chat to this message.
To stay subscribed, please text everybody get in here.
Yep.
As Elemental Destruction. That card was insane. Oh, it's insane, should I say. But like that kind of level of AoE for the Overload, we see now, look at that plus Lava Shock. Goodbye, Patron. Doesn't matter what health they've got anymore. They're just dead.
Jackie just disrespecting the Frothing Berserker. I like it. He knows he's got the clears lined up. He knows he's got the Healing Wave lined up to be able to take some damage off the board here.
He just drew Ancestor's Call as well.
He did. How much damage is this from the Frothing though? He's already at 7. He's getting 5 more. It's 12. Pushes 12. Yeah. All right. Jackie's still relatively chilling here.
Well, he can LE Destruction and Healing Wave, and he can still Lava Shot the turn after, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 5 Overload, if my memory serves.
Sounds right.
Jackie just hovers over Mally going, right, how much damage can I do with Mally now? It's like, no, Jackie, you can't kill him quite yet.
I do like the play from Sixo though, just going all in as best he can, disrespecting the Mana Tide. Yeah. He doesn't really have a plan with the rest of his hand beyond doing that, especially with 2 Fiery War Axes just backing this up.
And we've seen it again and again, like Patron's late game recovery got reduced because of Warsong, right? So there's just limited stuff you can do. He does get the Healing Wave as well for 14, big deal. So by much more time, LE Destruction goes down. You can unlock the mana with the Lava Shock, which is the first card in the hand of Jackie here next turn. And just JK. Well, you can't. Well, yeah. It's not the most powerful response from Sixo though, right? Like Jackie just has to pass a turn with a 5/5. It's not the end of the world, especially if he gets a taunt, which he does.
It's still like a good turn for it for Sixo though, because that's what he wants to do, right? So you're denying so much mana by locking out the Lava Shock that turn with the Lothab that it ends up being very powerful for you. Do you ever just get to the point where you just stick Mally to the board and just say no execute, your hand size is low?
What, like call into Lightning Storm this turn, for example?
Yeah, something like that.
Say, let's go, yeah.
It's something that you can consider as the game goes on, right? But I think for Jackie, his position is just so strong right now that why bother? He's not under any great threat.
I think he's going to have cards like Healbot as well. Just so you guys know as well, we don't actually know the deck lists. Or at least I don't, unless you've got them solid, just not told me.
Nope.
So for example, like Healbot wouldn't be too crazy to have in this list. So if Jackie thinks actually, yeah, I'll hex this next threat, I've got more heal in the deck for afterwards anyway, there you go. I don't need to rush this game, then I don't blame him, because the less cards Sixo has, the less ability he has to draw more cards because of the way cards like Battle Rage work, for example.
Yeah, and you do want to keep your minion count to a minimum, right? Which to make sure you're as likely as possible to get that Mali magic happening later on. But you can see Jackie's not all in on just Malygos. He's got Drake, he's got Rag, he's got some other.
Yeah, he can call and get Rag and just be like,
right.
Okay.
So yeah, Healbot certainly wouldn't be out of the question. And then you see the Emperor as well. I was about to comment. I don't think we've seen a single Emperor activation yet this
and
time,
it hurts me.
right? Which is kind of the iconic thing outside of Patron Warrior from this metagame was just Emperor making so many beautiful, degenerate things possible. One of the greatest cards to ever exist in this game. I think almost universally agreed. I don't think there's ever been a card like as strong as Emperor that didn't then become just loathed by the community after a certain point.
I think there's a card as strong as Emperor, and it's in Jackie's hand. Charged Hammer. Deal
Okay,
2.
cool.
Have you seen the funny things with that card you can do now in Wild?
No, I don't think so.
With the bot that doubles hero powers, because Charge Hammer gives you deal 2. It gets kind of silly with cubes.
Do you keep it and stuff?
Deal
Yeah, okay.
200.
Nice.
Like, okay. Yeah, Emperor would be huge. And Emperor, I think a lot of people got upset by its power, but the thing I did enjoy about it was that it allowed you to do things you couldn't do otherwise, like really silly, funny things,
right.
which is why I like Hearthstone. You can do silly things in the game. So.
But yeah, that was the point I was making is like, most times a strong card, like even as cool as it might be, you look at like Shudderwock, current example, everyone was like, wow, this card's like goofy and awesome. And then it turns out to be powerful and now suddenly everyone hates it, Like that's kind of the pattern of a Hearthstone metagame. But I think Emperor, like almost everyone looks back on Emperor and like, that was a really cool card for the game,
I think there might be a lot of people that glad it isn't played in Standard anymore, but during its time, I'm glad it existed.
Those people are buffoons, Raven. Every metagame would be better with Emperor.
Nat Pagel, or if you are a certain person called Nathan, that's Admiral Zamora. Nat Pagel.
Yeah.
Which is just incorrect in every way, shape, and form. And I choose
Sixo's out. Sixo's back to ladder. He's got a finish to pick up this month, all right? Never mind this silly little show match. Come on.
Jesus. This is the history of Hearthstone, Saul. This is not some silly little show match. Whatever Sixo may say, but Patron Warrior getting absolutely dumpstered yet again. I feel like any player who's thought about this, or maybe even talked to the right people, because although this isn't Wild, it's as close to being Wild without Wild, right? So to just say, yeah, Patron Warrior's not going to get there, and yeah, we thought it was going to be cool watching. It's cool for me because it's funny to like watch you be upset about a deck that you love so much sucking. So I'm happy about it. Yeah, look, Jackie.
I understand. You can't be as much of a dick as I am, and not have people be happy when you're miserable. Like that's the thing.
Yeah. I'm miserable enough times, so it's nice to switch it up a little bit. But we can see the matches that have happened today. Dane taking the 3-2 win over JustSaying, and then Jackie 3-0 over Sixo, putting a point on the board for him, and doing so in a fashion and in a meta game that I believe was Jackie's to a certain extent. He played the Egg Druid and then Malygos Shaman, and then Secret Paladin, who's not been there.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna say, right? Jackie has always been this way. There was a little rumbling at the start of this year, the new competitive year, the year of the Raven. Sorry, it's still a little tough coming out. I'm sorry. Wow, that's a statement. Badly taken out of context, isn't it? So, should we just own up, Raven? Should we just...
No, let's talk to Jackie instead and see what he has to say about life. A fellow Brit. Hey, Jackie, you okay?
Hello. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Go. Yeah. So we're just saying congratulations on 3-0, very strong win, and you needed it based on your previous week's scores. But we were just saying this current meta game we're playing in feels like it's right up your street, being able to Egg Druid, the Malygos Shaman. Like, did you enjoy this one specifically?
Yeah, definitely. This is kind of this was kind of the stage of Hearthstone where I started to get more competitive. Like during like Nax and GVG and all the early sets, I was just a casual player playing ladder at like rank 16 and all that kind of stuff, just memeing around. So this is when I kind of started to get more competitive, and obviously Egg Druid, like with Blackrock Mountain, you can play like Dragon Egg, and you have like Living Roots from these two expansions. So yeah, it's the first week I can bring that.
And we've seen Patron get just dumpstered in both matches now. Sixo going 0-3, Saying going 0-2 with it. Did you consider Patron? What did you think about it? And did you were you prepared to beat Patron as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the decks I was kind of expecting were like Patron and Secret Paladin were the two decks that I kind of wanted to be. I was expecting a lot of people to bring and wanted to be prepared for, and so my lineup was like pretty good against those. Especially the Shame, and the Shame was a bit of a meme, but it's good against those specific decks, so I thought, screw it, let's just bring it.
Dude, at first it was like we saw your opening hand and we were like, huh. Like we thought you were just gonna play, mid-range and just Bloodlust, whatever. And then we saw your opening hand, we're like, huh, Ancestral Knowledge, Lava Shock. Okay. But then he's playing, is this aggro? And then you played Mana Tide and we were like, huh. And then I saw Crackle and was like, wait. He's playing Malygos. This is Jackie we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be like the Crusher Shaman for a bit, like the Blade Master Res and like Earth Ellies and like that kind of nonsense for a little bit. But then Mali came out. But you're a very creative deck builder, as we know. Are there any like weeks down the line that you've already planned for that you kind of have some like spicy memes cooking up for us?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I've been actually practicing with Dane. Me and Dane have been doing some practice together, so.
Okay.
You need to not play Patron.
You got to fly the flag for the country, right? That's the most important thing.
Team UK all the way.
Yeah, no, I didn't do too well the first couple of weeks, so I'm hoping next couple of weeks I can competitively meme.
The only way you know how, Jackie. The only way you know how. All right, well, congratulations on the win again, and we'll see you later. Enjoy your evening.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, well, again, there's congratulations to Jackie there, taking the 3-0 over Sixo. Just to give you a reminder of the expansions we've included. So far, we are currently up to week number 3 of History of Hearthstone. Blackrock Mountain and the Grand Tournament are in play, and so far, led to some nice nostalgic moments, Sal.
Sorry, there are so many unsubscribers to my Patron fact service in chat right now.
Yeah, I've just seen it.
Chat's just for the best. No one wants Patron facts.
Oh no, there we go. There's a few more. Okay. Everybody get in here now.
Oh yeah, people are feeling it now. All right, awesome. I'll sign them all up to the newsletter. But yeah, we've got one more match, coming up for you very, very soon. And this is one that potentially could be played at a very, very high level, because these are two players that, from what I've seen so far, Zalay versus Neriah. Not only do they both have a great record, they're 2-0, but they've also been putting a ton of work into prepping their lineups, really thinking about like what the metagame's going to look like, what do they want to target, what's the best way to build their decks. Zalay even said as much on interview that he was having a great time preparing for these tournaments. It is a little bit different this week around, and I honestly suspect that's a little bit of what we saw with Sixo, because we're right at the end of the ladder season. So, the time that people choose to put into preparing for an event like this might be a little bit lower as they assess their priorities, but, we'll see.
That's part of the gauntlet, but yes, we do have Neriah and Zalay coming up next. We're going to go to a very, very short break while we set up the match, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more History of Hearthstone.
Traveler.
change your mind.
Require my assistance? Adios! We're gonna be rich.
Games.
Inferno! Require my assistance? Who am I?
Let me change your mind.
Welcome back to the History of Hearthstone. I'm Raven. Joining me is Sartol, of course, to finish off the day and finish off week number 3 of this tournament. We have one more match left for you. It's going to be Neriah versus Zalay, because we have 4 matches every week, but unfortunately Ant and Orange is going to have to be played off stream, mainly because Ant actually had some issues with his flights. He's traveling at the moment and he just couldn't make it, so it's unfortunate, but we'll get a score and an update for you guys as and when that match is played out. But let's talk about Neriah versus Zalay. Both these players are at 2-0 so far in this tournament, and looking to make, one of them is looking to make it 3-0.
Yeah, this is the big counterpoint to, or I guess the antithesis of the other 3-0 player, Dane, right? Like, these are the two most accomplished players, maybe outside of Sixo, in the tournament in terms of tournament record. You know, Neriah had a couple of huge years last year and then a couple of years before that. Zalay, of course, been right up there in points earnings for so long, and has been a high placer in tournaments ever since making his splash onto the scene at ESL Legendary Series, I believe it was, back in the day with the old school casters, Frodan and TJ.
The oldest of schools.
Exactly, and this is one of the key points of this tournament that we do need to go over, is that although we are allowing old expansions, we don't have the magic button to be able to unnerf all of the cards that have been nerfed throughout the years. So that does have an impact on the metagame, I think, particularly for Druid through these early weeks, right? Because they were so reliant on Force of Nature Savage Draw for so long that it's that, and it's the Warsong nerf that we've just seen how big an impact not being able to Warsong in this metagame has had on Patron Warrior, which is now 0-5 in this week, I believe.
Patron Warrior's been suffering. I'd also say, talk about Druid though, Ancient of Law was just a card you put in every Druid deck to draw 2 cards for a 7-mana 5/5, and also Keeper the Grove at 2-4 before it got nerfed was often the anti-aggro tool that won you the game on turn 4 or turn 2, depending on Innovate lifestyles or not. So that's it kind of got nailed a little bit.
Innovate Keeper a Flame Imp. That was the dream.
I remember doing that to Modern Leopard on ladder, and he just insta quit. Oh, no, is it a tournament? Is it a tournament?
Yeah, you just concede.
quit.
You just concede.
And I was
Unless you have Sulfur. If you have Sulfur, you can keep playing. If you don't have Sulfur, you just concede. You play another game.
And also, let's look at these players, Neriah and Zalay. Both players Warlock's banned. Both players bring in Warrior and Mage, but then it's Paladin and Priest going here. So do you think with both players bringing Warrior, it's going to be Patrons all over today?
I hope for their sakes at this point that it isn't. But at the same time,
around it. Someone's got to win.
That's true. And at the same time, Zalay was one of the very best. Saying that, Sixo was as well. You know, just in terms of like pure patron play, Sixo and Zalay were right up there, and it really was a deck that, you know, gave you what you put into it as well. You know, like the greater a player you were at Patron Warrior, then the harder it was for you to be defeated by even some of the bad matchups. But it still didn't work out too well for Sixo. But it appears Zalay, this is so in character for Zalay, right? Everyone else has got caught up in that Patron nostalgia train. Zalay, cold, calculating, emotionless, understands that Patron Warrior is hot garbage in this metagame without Warsong Commander, and he is on the Wallet Warrior plan instead.
Yep, play what's good. That's what Zalay does, to be completely honest. He doesn't really... I've not really ever noticed Zalay caring that much for a deck. He just plays what's good. That's it. Plays the best decks he can find. And on the other side, let's get comfortable as well, because Neriah is playing a kind of control deck in himself, although with the beautiful nerfing the nerf of Molten Giant means that Echo Molten Giant is available, and Neriah is playing Giant's Mage, a deck I believe Neville's was relatively popular for, if you remember that throwback.
I do indeed. It's really how he got his big break and his first kind of exposure as a Twitch streamer, honestly, is just that Echo Giants deck, just really putting in work and getting his name out there.
Echo Medivh, super cool card, along with cards like Duplicate as well, really made this style of Mage so hard to play against. Like, what do you remove? When do you remove it? If you try and remove something to play around Echo of Medivh, you might cause a Duplicate proc as well. So you had to constantly work out what you were playing around and what was the priority kill list. Whereas Zalay now, it's got the Dragons, it's got the Shredder, it's got the Deathbite and the Justicar Trueheart. So he does have very good tools to pile on some pressure, but Neriah has the Giant and the Echo effects ready and waiting.
Yeah, a little bit of a unique build here as well. Zalay is playing those mid-range dragons, as well as we saw Alexstrasza and Sarah at the top end for Zalay, alongside, of course, Justicar Trueheart, bringing that tank up ability, which we were expecting to see a non-zero amount of during this week at least, and it's like Zalay is going to make that happen.
I think as well, this might even be a bit of a nod to players just getting better over time of Hearthstone, right? Better deck building. Yeah. Because Twilight Guardian is a very, very, very good card. No one can really argue that fact. But was it played as much in like control style Warrior? It wasn't. So it's gone from the difference of, a control deck should all be removal in late game. Whereas I believe at least now, currently, see the self-ping from that. Give me that Molten Giant health. Just I'll finish my point very quickly, as I'm sure you want to talk about the ping. But yeah, it's less about just playing what the deck should look like and playing good cards in the deck. Because again, Shredder, Twilight Guardian, not the usual suspects.
Yeah, I mean, not really that much to say about the ping. He pinged himself because he's got Molten Giants in his hand. Kind of makes sense, you know?
Not something we've seen for a while, though, was more my point.
It's not, no. There's very few instances where, of course, like, dealing damage to yourself is a good idea. There's, Warlock Spellstone. There's Freeze Mage Mirrors, of course, as we saw in, still to this day, one of the greatest sets of Hearthstone that's ever been played. Tice versus Oskaka in the World Championship semi-finals, I believe it was. And of course, Molten Giants are the other big factor for that as well. So Neriah obviously feels that, like, with this being a slow-ish warrior, he's not going to be under huge amounts of pressure, so he's happy to ping himself down. But it's a very mid-rangey deck from Zalay, as we now see Frothing Berserkers being drawn as well. So maybe the self-ping ends up being a little bit ambitious here.
Yeah, we see the difference as well in this deck. It's running shield slams and all these mid-range minions. Is this
And
just
Justicar.
become good card warrior?
Yeah.
Well, again though, it's the difference of Justicar not being as one-dimensional as tank up, health, never die. It's more, like playing one Justicar, one, it's just a solid card, but also it activates almost my shield slams on demand, very similar to the way Shield Maiden does in hand now. Really interesting deck, actually. It shows as well that Zalay isn't just saying, well, what was good then, and do I just build that? It's actually saying, what's just a good deck in this format, as opposed to, as you said, kind of reminiscing about it.
Right. And it goes to show, again, he said multiple times at this point, he's enjoying putting work into this. He's enjoying a new deck building challenge. So it's no surprise to see him, really get off the beaten path. He's not just bringing, well-known net decks from the day. He's really putting the thought in and coming up with some Zalay original homebrews.
Now suddenly, have all the Molten Giants you want, friend. You might just be dead.
Yep.
Bash as well, if you can't remember, 3 mana, deal 3 armor up for 3, but also most importantly, you can aim that at face. There were, decks at one point where Bash was used as a relatively aggressive tool to actually finish up some games or gain board control in a more tempo-based deck.
There's a lot of weird dynamics going on right now, just in terms of the knowledge race between these two players, because this is a hidden deck list format, right? Like, we don't know the decks, the players don't know the decks, they're completely concealed. So Neriah pinged himself in the face, which certainly telegraphs to Zalay that it's probably a Molten Giant kind of plan. But from Neriah's side, he has no real idea of, like, is there Brawl in my opponent's deck? He played Justicar, but he's also been playing very mid-rangey outside of that. So is this a Brawl deck or not? He has a lot of minions. If it isn't a Brawl deck, I can kind of go all in with Molten Giants pretty much whenever I want. Whereas otherwise, he's got to try and think about, navigating around that Brawl, trying to get a Molten Giant duplicated if the Brawl does come down, that kind of thing. So there's still this kind of weird portion in the game where both players, even though, Neriah's all the way down at 6 here, they're both still trying to, like, feel each other out for information just a little bit.
And I think as well, this is very awkward for Zalay because he has to think, okay, it's just hit Rag, either kills him or procs a block, right? But then what's the recovery after Rag? It's a control deck, so it probably runs Polymorph and such, or it can kill Rag. But then is just swinging with the weapon and then just bashing face just worthwhile? It procs the block. You have bash for next time. So instead of Neriah removing a threat, Neriah actually has to heal in some way. So Zalay can ask different questions. I just don't think he can ask them all at the same time, which is what he's going to consider right now. Wants to potentially kill the scientist first, because what this does is if it pulls ice block, it won't pull ice block because one's already live. So this leaves the ice block number 2 in the deck. Very common play when Mad Scientist ice block was a thing.
Yeah. And the problem is, because of the nature of Death Spite, just by swinging face there to pop the first block, he put the scientist in a position where Neriah could just ping it off himself, right? So if he couldn't do that, we might have just seen Zalay go face, not play anything, and then just have that second bash ready to go for lethal. But with that just being able to be pinged off, Neriah has a big issue here in terms of not being able to play that second block and stabilize his health, but does have the Alex to pull himself back up. That does get him away just a little bit from those really insane Molten Giant turns, just for a couple of turns.
And those insane Molten Giant turns are what Zalay has to really worry about now. And I think Zalay has to hold Rag for his finishing damage, because if he plays Rag, deals the 8 damage to Neriah, say for example he could have Rag Shield Slam that turn, then suddenly Polymorph, Molten, like Echo, Molten, and then you're just dead. So Zalay quite rightly here, just setting up some damage and then having Ragnaros available. And yes, I forgot about Mechanical Sheep too.
I forgot about this little guy. What a
It's a really cool card, actually.
Explosive Sheep. Forgot all about him.
The original Defile.
The original AoE Voodoo Doll Defile thing.
The original.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a very cool card once it, saw a bit more usage. It's kind of nice. Oof. Okay.
So Neriah played a dupe there. Which means if this Doomsayer does get cleared, he's just going to get a couple more Doomsayers in hand.
But do you care? If you boom slam and then you just Doomsayer, great. I just hit you in the face and kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, Neriah's plan from his perspective, because he doesn't have more freeze effects to go with those, you know?
Do you think he's just baiting the ice block so Neriah's thinking Zilay won't kill the Doomsayer? So then the dupe's pre-set up for Molten and he jukes the ice block? So Zilay's just passed when he could have actually effectively just set up lethal from our vision, of course.
Oh, Healbot now is huge, and second Molten. This is all coming together very, very nicely.
How does he piece it together though? Because Molten's still a little bit too expensive. And
well, now with the dupe in play already, I was going to say, yeah, he can just slam one because he got to keep that dupe, right? So now it's just catch-22. Like, you kill this or you don't. I'm happy either way. So
that's a good one. Good old Alex Straz's champion. Fiery War Axe on legs. That's what some people used to call that card. Zilay striking the thinking face. The pose of just touching your face to make you think more.
Is that how it works? Finger contact with face enhances brain power.
I actually think there is some medical studies. You know the whole touching your temples when a lot of people do that, right?
Yeah, life coach says that's to like block peripheral vision and focus. And
well, a lot of I believe, because the internet's never lied to me before, but there is some studies that have proven that sort of stance actually helps your thought patterns or whatever. You know, like
I believe
your focus or whatever.
Right, you just block external stimuli, right? So you're just kind of purely focused on what you want to be looking at. It makes sense.
And also massage your head a little bit if you're feeling it.
Well, there goes the dupe.
And here goes a long ball of giants.
The oh whoops, I didn't really think about that kind of face right now. He doesn't look like he's in a good spot.
Nope, because that is just a little bit awkward. And now just double giants just fine, right? Are you ever bothered about 13? Oh, yeah, you are. Wait. That's not ice block, right? Or is it? I thought you didn't have a secret up.
I think you're right.
I think that was dupe, but that's...
Yes, right.
Good job, team. So, you are suddenly bothered about Grom if you don't heal. Or taunt.
Or ping the 1-1.
All that. But what about Grom in a rage?
Yeah.
Ah!
I don't think in a rage the card's going to be playing. I'm
playing devil's advocate right now.
Yeah, I know. Like, the more I look at this deck, though, it's interesting because, like, I felt, Justicar was in the opening hand, so the whole time I've been, like, very defined by thinking that this is, like, Control Warrior with dragons. Actually, what I think Zilay's done here, we talked, I think it was in the first series, about how powerful Execute was in this deck is really what got it nerfed, right? So instead of that, like, Zilay's just choosing to play Shield Slam as a 1-mana, quote, Execute, and then to make sure the Shield Slam is as powerful as Execute would be, he's playing Justicar to make sure that he has tons of armor. Like, outside of
the Shield Maidens, right?
Right, outside of that, it's just a very aggressive mid-rangey dragon package. Makes
also, funnily enough, this sheer volume of armor is going to give Zilay time versus Neriah, even if Neriah drops another 2 giants.
Sure.
No, you know what I mean, though. Is actually look at the damage he has from hand, right? He's actually got a reasonable sum of damage from hand, and Zilay can survive 2 big swings of Moltens on the board. Unless there's like 7, of course, then yeah, sure. But in general, it's looking pretty good here. He can remove this giant, and again, he has 6 damage just from hand right now. And there's only 1 ice block left. And also, We know boombots can get the work done when they're needed to.
Oh yeah.
That's just 8 damage to the face.
There is a Sun Fury though in hand, crucially as well, and it's going to be very hard outside of that Blackwing for Zalay to do any damage through huge taunts at this
That's
point.
why you do 8 to face with the boombots. You only need the Blackwing soul.
Yeah, you're on it.
Can it drop a heal bot though? Most importantly, which I think has to be part of Neriah's plan this turn.
Not so sure. Oh, that is still a good chunk of damage. Second Corruptor off the top? Has he used one already? I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't recall a Corruptor being on the board.
Molten again, and then he has Sun Fury for backup, but he's going to hold. Oh, second Alex Strauss's champion. Doesn't allow him to get through enough damage.
I think he's missed his window now.
With the heal bot.
Yeah. Neriah did burn one heal bot, but the issue now isn't the fact that Neriah heals, it's the fact that how does Zalay ever touch Neriah ever again? Because next turn, as you said, Molten, Taunt, and then Echo, and then Molten, Taunt. You know, like you're just never going to be able to hit face with a minion again.
Right.
I don't think he'll run the spells too.
What now?
And the problem, yeah, from Zalay's perspective, is any damage he sends into taking care of these 8/8s is then damage that he's not sending to face. But he's already used both his shield slams, he's used bash. Like, what other ways has he got to really clutch this game if he doesn't deal with these 8/8 minions? So yeah, I think you've just got to start sinking damage into the taunts, and that is probably just the last window closing for Zalay in this game 1.
There could still be something funky. You know, maybe there's a Ysera.
I think there is. I think we saw it in the Mulligan even.
Oh, yeah. So there can be Ysera Awakens. Like I said, he's currently on 69 health. Dramatic pause for Twitch chat to say something during that time. Yeah. And as you can see, not many cards left either. And Neriah did burn an antique heal bot. So you're saying there's a chance? You can get this done.
Love what you're doing. It's like the equivalent of like you go to a comedy club, right? You stand up, you do your set, and you just say a word, and it's like, all right, crowd, you can write your own joke for that. It's a funny word. Like, get on with it.
It's just an interactive cast is what I'm trying to create here, so it's a new thing I'm working on.
Fair enough.
Crowdsourcing the cast.
Crowdsourcing the cast. Okay, let me check Twitch chat right now. Oh, it's lethal. Oh wow. Okay. Who knew?
Got him.
It's a 31 mana lethal this turn. Amazing.
If he was on 2. Here comes the Giants. Here comes the Healbot. All the way up to 14. And now the Echo for Healbot number 2. That is a valid point. Echo going to get some work done generating that second Healbot. And this is a problem right now.
It is indeed.
It's not even
just isn't a brawl deck, right?
Yeah. It's not even whether Zalay has the tools available or has the tools in the deck. He's running out of time to even draw them now.
Yeah.
Like if that wasn't what I don't know what, then he's just not got the time. He's gonna get beaten up. There are 3 Giants on the board, 3 more in hand. Sorry, heal bots as well. Another duplicate. I think he just missed the window.
He's massaging that face as much as he can, though, trying to get all of those synapses firing. I think it's going to work out for him, though.
He should do some pull-ups on his bar. It's quick, someone sub to him. He'll get a pull-up, and that might maybe get it done. But Neriah takes game number 1 with the Giants Mage, and as we both sit up as we got quite relaxed during that.
Yeah, I know. It's
relatively long game. We're like,
tank cut warrior.
IRL resident sleeper as we got there. But Zalay is playing the Dragon Warrior. Kind of nice slant on that deck, but he did take the loss. Neriah just put up the Molten Giant wall. And funnily enough, that we talked a lot about the nerfs, but that couldn't have been done if Molten Giant wasn't the only card in Hearthstone to be buffed. I think
the only card to have like a nerf reverted, at least, anyway, like, for sure. So
I don't think there's any card been buffed, has it? They nerf stuff. They don't buff.
It's weird because you kind of get into like strictly better territory, right? Because like some of the cards that were quote changed dramatically, like you could then argue were better in their later forms than they were early on, right? Like the Unleash the Hounds in its OTK form, is that better or worse than it is as just unleashing dogs when it was cheap? You know, like before it went out to 4 mana and then back to 3. Like you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
It was better.
Okay.
So let's have a look at what's left here. Neriah on the Priest and Warrior, Zillet on the Dragon Warrior, and the Mage and Paladin, whatever they may be. This Priest, though, I'm surprised it's been so much Priest. Honestly, I know it's like it gained a few good tools, and it has Light Bomb, available to it as say maybe emergency switch, but I don't know. Kind of surprised.
I mean, I'm going to make a call here, and I suspect this is going to be an AoE heavy Priest for Neriah. Which potentially with both Organized Circle and Light Bomb, as we saw from Dane, because classically one of the good matchups for that Echo Giants Mage was again Patron Warrior. It had Flame Strike, it had Frost Nova Doomsayer, and it had an impenetrable wall of taunts in the late game. So again, this could be kind of like that target Patron kind of strategy coming out from Neriah.
And this warrior kind of suggests that as well. Good old revenge. Once you took enough damage, would deal 3 damage as a whirlwind effect. Armor Smith, Justicar. This looks like the taunty sort of tank up warrior. There were sludge belchers in the hand as well for Neriah. So it looks like, yeah, you might be right. Just the whole you will never win with the Patron warrior. So I'm not bringing Patron warrior though, but still, kind of does a similar job versus any aggressive deck.
So yeah, you see the only like real controlling cards in this deck, right, are Shield Maiden, Justicar, and Shield Block, right? Which kind of all makes sense just for that theory that I was talking about, which is making Shield Slam as powerful for you as Execute used to be in kind of Tempo Warrior and Dragon Warrior. So I really like this build that Zillet's put together, even though it's not proving successful for him just yet.
Despite just going to that Shredder, let's see what the 2-drop that shouldn't be allowed to be played. Oh no, that's a reasonable one. Windrush Agent is in the pool at the moment.
We're on meta.
I like it. That 1/4. Good job. Now though, no dragon.
Ooh.
So this Alex Straz's champion's just not getting there, and I guess that poke is kind of weird because
no, it's fine. It's fine because he was at exactly 30, right? So if he wants to go to 29, he can hit the 1/4 anyway. So you're talking about Battle Rage, right? Is what your concern was?
Yeah, I just mean a Battle Rage that doesn't require a swing.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal.
Okay. Main point being that Zillet, as far as I'm aware, doesn't know what warriors Neriah is playing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Patron runs Deathbite and Armor Smith. So, although I imagine the Armor Smith might not be played in this fashion, so Zillet might be getting a bit of an inkling.
Yeah. Now we saw Neriah giggle to himself a little bit, rolled his eyes a little bit when Zillet had the Justicar on curb earlier in the game. This time he is returning the favor with a Justicar of his very own, and we will settle back into our seats
I have actually just done that.
stance.
Luckily, my microphone moves, so I can just swing it over where I'm sat now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you'd have to say overall, the Justicar is more valuable for Neriah than Zillet, because Neriah's deck is about going late game, is about survival, is about removal, whereas Zillet is more of that spot removal from the executors you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily enough, as your Drake being drawn means Alex Straz's champion can get some work done. Bash taking down Justicar means that Zillet can start this march onto just dealing enough as much damage as possible to Neriah, but this is where it starts getting a bit scary. When you start pushing as the aggro deck on turn 7 versus the control deck, especially when it's already played Justicar, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah, I mean, Zillet right now is trying to get this Deathbite charge used because he doesn't want to like drop an Azure Drake into a Deathbite charge, right? It just feels terrible. But this is the power of Justicar. Like, he had net 0 pressure on the board there. He had 4 damage in play, and Neriah could just heal for 4 every turn. So Neriah is in no obligation to use any resource there.
Grom swing, let's go.
Despite that, goes ahead and just drops the slam anyway. And honestly, I don't hate it.
Why not, right? He's got plenty of stuff right now. Even just with the Despite equipped, he has a lot of just on-demand removal.
Otherwise, we're just going to see a lot of this kind of stalemate situation.
So how's your week going, Sal?
Die to the Despite, though. So they're still choosing not to play it.
Execute the 1-3. This is kind of weird.
Settling in. Neriah didn't draw cards this game, right? It's not like Zalae's setting out for fatigue already?
No, he slammed the 2 health on the Alexstrasza, right? On the Alexstrasza's champion.
Mm-hmm.
So, not drawn anything yet, not shield blocked. Just been doing the old tank up.
Okay.
The weird thing here is the longer this game goes on, I don't know what Zalae's overall plan is. Because it's only getting worse.
Well, so the one thing, like Despite Control Warrior back in the day, one thing that you always had to do against it, like even with very heavily favored decks, like Mid-Range Druid, back when they still had Force of Nature Savage Draw, one of the things you really had to do was like overload their removal. So you didn't want to just be playing like one threat at a time and then they just shield slam it or whatever, or like you just play one minion into a Despite and they just smack it or whatever it was, you know? You needed to like save up resources and then like punch hard on the right turns, play like 2 or 3 minions at once, and then keep doing that for several turns. So maybe that's what we were looking at from Zalae there. He's just trying to save up that hand size so that he can like consistently push back to back for 2, 3, 4 turns in a row.
Nice little raptors. There you go.
Is that what it says when it comes out? Okay.
That was a terrible, like almost like Russian-esque accent, which Jen and I have. I was saying might go. It was terrible, not the accent, of course, on there themselves. But
there's some voice actor who like got contracted for Blizzard is just watching this for some reason. It's like, wow.
What's worse is if the voice actor is just Russian. Oh, it's a terrible accent. It's like, wait, what? But yeah, this is. The Dr. Boom kind of evens up the scales in that battle plan, right, from Zalae, in terms of, I'll put some minions on the board at one time and push. Boom almost deals with 2 to 3 minions in itself.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Death Lords as well in Neriah's hand, so it's a throwback to the old Nexramus days.
Yep. It's also going to further put pay to any kind of fatigue win condition. Not only did Neriah get his Justicard down earlier, so he's going to have the massive armor advantage later on. If it comes down to it, he's got that Death Lord as well to thin Zalae's deck a little bit. So yeah, Zalae does need to make a push happen here. So yeah, 15 cards for Zalae and 15, yeah. So Zalae going first is drawing first, so he's kind of the half card ahead, if you like.
Interesting trades there. What did you think of just Shield Slam? Because
I think he's considering Shield Slam to be almost a universal removal with the amount of armor he has already. So he's just using like more situational removals while he can.
Yeah, I'm just worried about, well, your shield blocks aren't proccing Shield Slam anytime soon because you don't want to fatigue. And then there aren't that many left for spot removal. So the second like Neriah clears this board once and does some damage, the Shield Slams might not be as easily activatable in this matchup as Zalae as you may be used to them being. I wonder if there's anything big for Zalae to get out of this Death Lord that's actually useful. I think you said we did see a Ysera, right?
I think so, yeah. Definitely Alex. And I think in the last game, an Ysera was mulliganed away as well.
Neriah, literally resident sleeper.
Me too, buddy. Me too. Same. I'm just really not sure like what Zalae's game plan is here, because I like, especially now that he's seen that Death Lord, right? He knows he has a fatigue disadvantage.
Well, that's it, right? The way I would look at this game now from Zalae is if you're playing it this slow, then you pretty much lay both decks out and see who wins. You know what I mean? It's almost just like snap at that point. And if you do that, then surely Zalay loses. If you just match card for card, Zalay loses this game at this point. So you don't think?
I mean, I get the sentiment. It's just the fact that like Zalay has more minions, right? And like minions have more potential to like 2-for-1 than a card like Execute or Shield Slam or whatever it is has. So suddenly, like, if that statement is going to be true, it comes down to the value that Neriah can get out of some of his potential 2-for-1, 3-for-1 cards, like Revenge, like Brawl if he's playing it. You know, all of those kinds of things. Because otherwise, like the more minion-heavy deck, like the deck that just has cards with stats written on them, can sometimes just push for value, even in the hyper late game.
Yeah, and I was, you know, in that Laying the Mountain card for card, I kind of, you know, didn't say it, so you're quite right, but you know, Brawl taking 2 minimum, for example, you know, Brawl's worth 2, and so on. So I don't know. For me, it looks like Neriah is fine, especially once you start adding fatigue in, because then just Neriah every turn he buys is just a turn much closer to death for Zalay, and I think he can outlast him. But we'll see if he gets there. I am very interested to see what Zalay's plan is, because Zalay is not a player who will stick in a game to stick in a game, right? He'll play a game until he is convinced he cannot win, and then quit. He won't just be like, well, I really want to be on stream for longer. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not really looking for that from Zalay.
11 for Neriah, and then I believe Zalay will be down to 10 now, due to the Deathlord draw. Yep.
Also, what's kind of awkward is Zalay has 2 cards in hand he can't play, which makes it a little bit more difficult for him to, you know, control the power of his turns, because he's effectively playing with 8 out of the 10 cards in his hand, and the other 2 are just -2 cards in hand that you can hold, which is tough when you're trying not to play cards.
Yeah, he also just has 10 cards total in hand, and he hasn't drawn Justicar yet either, so he can't afford to be burning cards, so he has to be playing things. If he's playing things, he can potentially overextend into this Death Spite, into Revenge, into Brawl again, if it's there, which we presume it is, just based on this kind of anti-patron theory we're working on.
And also just the shape of this is a, you know, this is a control warrior.
This
deck.
is control warrior.
Yeah, come on. In before no brawls. Sludge Belcher again. Card I think was more powerful than we maybe initially gave it credit for. Early on, I'm talking. Because that
in the reveal, dude, so many people were like, what? It's just like Ascension Shield Master with a Goldshire Footman inside it? Like, that's terrible.
There are
Any giggle.
So in reviews now, there are cards that have taught me how to review other cards.
Yeah.
Like Sludge Belcher does something, death rattle into leaving something annoying on the board. Yes, then it must be good. It just has to be, because Belcher was. Very similar to the way, you know, is Blessing of Kings a good card? Yes, then Bowman must be insane, because then that's a 3-mana 5/5. You know that, like.
Oh, I hate that. I hate it so much, but I don't want to get into it. I'm
really talking very base terms.
Yeah, I know, but I think that system like gets you into trouble more than it would usually.
Was right.
Because otherwise, like, what's the 3/3 that recruits an 8-mana card in the game right now?
Oh, Vanguard, something Vanguard.
Right, like by that definition, isn't that card just broken? Right, like if it recruits an 8-mana minion and it's a 3/3 itself, then you know it's a -1 mana 3/3. That doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid.
I don't think you got the gist of my system, Sol. I don't think you're at my level enough to keep up. So you know what? You be okay with your system. I'll be okay with mine.
Okay.
We'll get back to this game. Oh wait, no, nothing still happens. So let's carry on talking about reviews. Oh shit, slap sick.
Shield Sam's a frothing, just essentially, you know, from fear of his armor total, I guess. You know, he's still got to stay a good chunk ahead on armor here because he took the Alexstrasza down to 15. He's only a card and a half ahead in fatigue, I believe, right now, which means that he still needs a decent. He can't fall too far behind in the total health pool to then still be able to win on fatigue.
Kind of funny as well that Zalay's got up to this much armor without having Justicar. It's like almost as much armor, relatively speaking, as Neriah.
Yeah.
And Neriah's had just a car from what, turn 6?
Right. It's big, but again, it's that value of just having minions, right?
Yeah.
Because Delay's played minions and they haven't been connecting or sticking, but Neriah's had to equip weapons and hit them, you know. So he's
and
been
also
taking that little bit of damage here. And
play removal and not hero power.
Yeah. Fair. Neriah and Zalay are just making sure you guys get your money's worth out of your hours of Hearthstone for this event. You know, Ant's not able to play the 4th game. That's going to happen off stream. So Neriah and Zalay just came along with the Tank Up Warriors just to make sure you guys got a full evening of Hearthstone broadcasting.
Yeah, what you don't know is there was actually an email that said break in case of emergency, and it was actually just 6 deck lists of control decks, just in case some of the players couldn't make it tonight. And yeah, Zalay and Neriah just said, right, well, we'll get the job done. We remember tanking up. So much so that he put it in his aggro or like mid-range warrior deck.
Still hasn't drawn it though.
The History of Hearthstone tournament, where we bring you metas from history, players from history, and memes from history, as we see Resident Sleepers hit
emotes from
right now.
history.
Yeah. Yes, guys, we are still in the game.
Do 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 do.
For some reason, like when he started that, I went to the countdown theme in my head.
That's much more bumpy. Like you could play that in a club, you know. Like...
Oh yeah. Only for 30 seconds though.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, no one knows what countdown is.
No, I just realised it's the wrong audience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get Jackie back, he'll know.
Yeah, exactly.
Now Belcher on Belcher action.
There's the brawl, by the way, that we've been theorizing for quite some time. And I like this. Neriah's not going to mess around. He understands that Zalay's keeping this hand size held back now. Like, we've reached the point in proceedings where Zalay knows that there's going to be a brawl, and Neriah knows that Zalay has resources in hand. So Zalay's never going to overcommit into a brawl, right? Like, Neriah can't make him overcommit into a brawl, so he might as well just take the value that he can get from a brawl at this point.
And still, you know, when you can take a brawl and leave a kind of awkward minion yourself on the board as the control deck, fine. Yeah, you know, Neriah gets a sludge, worst case scenario. Best case, he gets a Belcher, which is pretty sick. You know, if he wins that brawl, he ends up with the Belcher alive, and that is a huge advantage going into this late game.
That bottle of water was, in fact, full when we started this game. Okay, I have no idea.
Not water.
Zalay pushing, and now he does have that health lead that I was talking about, so he can survive just one maybe disadvantage in the card count in terms of fatigue. The problem is, like, the higher those numbers get, the less true that is, because you know, if it's the difference between taking 12 or 13 damage, you need a much bigger health advantage than if it's the difference between taking 3 and 4, you know?
Yeah. If Zalay pulls this off, I will be very... I mean, I already thought Zalay was all right at Hearthstone, but that'll be...
He was all right.
he was decent. I would say decent. But this has just been a well-played game, and I think what's impressive for me, at least, is Zalay formed this plan about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know, like, this was not, oh, I'm on the bottom 10 cards, I'm going to have to play slow to try and get a... It was like, no, this is turn 2. This is how I've got to play this game. Maybe turn 3. And still, Dr. Boom, Ragnaros, Grant, solid, you know, awkward minions for Neriah that Neriah has to answer. You can't leave any one of those on the board. And even this Frothing is a threat in itself right now.
You just grom this if you're Neriah? Like, is it that important to have that big push if you're ahead on fatigue anyway? I guess you can just smack it in revenge. Like, he's not going to get the 3 value out of this revenge anyway. He's at 15.
The game's over by that time, right?
I believe it's 12. Yeah, 12 that you need to get down to activate revenge, which is, not happening anytime soon when you've got 42 armor stacked on top of that 15 health.
Next threat, 4 cards for Zilay and a 5 card for Neriah. But this is where Zilay, with so little cards now, he just has to chain bombs.
Yeah. There's a question like, is one of those cards a second Deathlord for Neriah? Oh, it is, right on time. That's so huge.
That's pretty sick, especially with Revenge
Another
now.
card out. That's insane.
He can Deathlord Revenge execute, depending on what goes on. Or is this as good a brawl as he's ever going to get?
You just brawl Dr. Boom. Amazing.
You could do it with Deathlord, right?
Right, but then your opponent, like, that's just worse. Then your opponent, gets the other minion afterwards.
Sure.
You want to brawl after your Deathlord.
Yeah.
And this could be the real spanner in the works for Zilay's plan, because he set out to do this, and I think you saw a little reaction on his face when the Deathlord came down. That was like, oh crap, that's not helpful to my game plan. No reaction this time though. He probably a little grimace at best. There is finally that Justicar picked up though. Yeah.
This is one of the things as well, because the deck building is. I'll say old, for want of a better phrase. You've not played against these decks or this format for a very long time. Zilay was probably hoping there just wouldn't be Deathlords in this deck. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't like, of course you play Deathlord in Control Warrior. Do you know what I mean? It definitely isn't a given. At least it's not like when we were talking about Brawl, where Justicar. I wonder if he plays Justicar in Control Warrior. You know what I mean? It's like, well, Deathlord isn't a necessity or 100%, but it is, as you said, proving to be potentially Zilay's downfall right now.
There's also a small possibility that there aren't any minions left in his deck, right? Which would kind of be the dream at this point. But he got some pretty unfortunate boom bots there. He really wanted to push that Dr. Boom damage to the face. He does have that Ysera that we were alluding to earlier on. So he does at least get a dream card off of this before it inevitably gets dealt with. But he saw Zilay really wanted to be able to deal with that Deathlord with the Death Spite and the boom bots and then push that boom damage to face, but he did not get the luxury.
Ugh. So is he hoping now for Boom to live? Oh, coin brawl, let's go.
He was snapping to it. The alternative is just to execute the boom and just contest the Ysera, but then there's another Ysera card going over. So yeah, I think this makes sense.
I was gonna say, Zilay probably hoping that Boom survives so he could dream it and replay it or something, but
that's
there's
the worst
Ysera
outcome.
for Neriah, and ouchie is the word I'm thinking about for Zilay right now. Oh, Twilight Garden's gonna save the day, never mind.
But the problem now is that's both brawls for Neriah, right? There's one execute left, but look at the amount of threats that Zilay still has. Being ahead in fatigue doesn't matter if you've got a rag stuck to the board that your opponent can't deal with.
It's true, and look at him. Zilay's even going for just Justicar now. He's still not committing to the big boys he has left, like rag mainly.
Yeah, I mean that's his plan. I'm pretty sure.
One thing I would say is there's your Drake's a bit of a dead one, right?
It is, yeah.
Grom. There's another shield slam if he so desires. Oh, nice.
This is cute. I was just about to say, I kind of like just bashing that thing, because then you have Grom Revenge to be able to kill your opponent's activated Grom or a Ragnaros or whatever else. But yeah, that made perfect sense in the end. And the last card's a Drake as well. Would have been so huge for Zilay if that had got pulled off the Deathlord.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been big.
A free 4/4 on the board that he can't play otherwise.
Also, as well, the Sylvanas Brawl wouldn't have been as powerful.
Right.
Oof.
So yeah, Zilay needs to engineer a position where he can just land Rag or Grom as just a last threat that just persists on the board and keeps going. The problem is with his last card being unplayable, essentially, it becomes much harder to do than it could have been otherwise.
Well, that's a nice minion for Neriah there as well, just to put something on the board to contest this pressure from Zilay.
Yep,
it's actually pretty huge. Dash is gonna be nice as well. Now it's going to start. Now the fatigue is going to start to be a little bit of a problem, I feel.
So are we 76 versus 67 going into
It's
the
nowhere
fatigue
near
rounds?
enough, right? To win strictly fatigue.
Nope. That plus, Rag sticking though should still get him there, even in this disadvantageous position.
Slightly probably just going through all the permutations of exactly how much pressure you can apply by using as little cards as possible, and is it worth killing this shield maiden? That's one swing of the weapon going to reduce the armor down quite a lot. Now what's he going to do? Go in with Grom? Is he going to dream his Grom himself again? Trade, go face with the 3/6, and then you've got dreamed Grom to set up for the death spite the turn after, or later, whatever. Oh. Pulling the Twilight Guardian back.
Wow.
I wonder if this delay seriously saying one of those cards in hand is revenge. Because how else is Neriah dealing 1 damage this game?
I mean, I think the theory here is just to leave Rag in a spot where it has to get executed, right? And then, Grom in a spot where it has to get executed, and then Rag can come down after that. And then Zalay knows that Neriah doesn't want to do that, and therefore his answer to Grom is going to be his own Grom, and then there's the revenge, right, as the activator for the Grom, so there'd be a 3/1 on the board, so he just dreams to play around that. That's very confusing, I know. I hope that somewhat made sense, but it's kind of like when you can divine your opponent's hand exactly in this kind of fatigue situation, you really can get into that specific in terms of the interactions that you want.
It's like a game of checkers, right? You just need to make sure you've got that one extra take.
It's a solved game, exactly like checkers. Checkers is a solved game, and so is a game of Hearthstone where your opponent has drawn all 30 cards and you have some idea of what they're playing.
There's Bash Execute, the committal for killing the Grom. And now what's left? Ragnaros and that Twilight Guardian, which does get buffed again because the Azure Drakes are in hand, but the rest of those cards outside of Shield Block are looking pretty useless right about now.
So the question now is, Rag will get executed. Does this 3/6 change the clock enough in Zalay's favor? Rag gets dealt with by Grom, but because Neriah chose to do it in that order, Grom now comes down behind a 3/6 taunt. Which is kind of interesting in itself, right? Neriah could have chosen to trade his Grom into the opponent's Grom and kept the execute, knowing that there was a taunt in hand for the opponent.
Huh. Is Neriah ever considering that the damage from a trade into Grom, for example, is just enough? Enough of a difference in damage? Or health, should I say?
Sorry, what do you mean?
So, right now, it depends what the knowledge of the cards are, right? Because if Neriah knows there's just a Shield Slam in Zalay's hand,
right, then
he doesn't want to play Grom till fatigue has dealt with that. But then if he does, he's leaving up the Guardian. I don't know. This game's actually super tricky, and we know all the cards.
I honestly think Neriah just messed up. And I think he's realized it now, seeing the Rag come down, the look on his face.
Yeah. Did he know there was a Rag? Did we see Rag last game?
I'm not 100% sure, but
maybe that was just an assumption it wasn't even in the deck, but yeah, that's a well played. As I think Zalay takes the win here.
Yep, that's just uncontested Rag on the board. Zalay has to go through the motions here because he has to try and work out what his opponent's remaining cards are. But I think the play that leaves Rag on the board and doesn't kill it in a fatigue situation is a clear indicator that
it goes full circle from going deep to going very, very simple. Is this the best possible play in every scenario? Yes, it is.
Woo!
Okay, and let's just sit back up. Let's just take a stretch to just refresh ourselves. That was a game.
Spicy one.
very impressive from Zilay, as I said 2 hours ago now during the first few turns of that game. Zilay had this plan early on. The Death Lords got a bit spicy for him. But again, I agree. I think whether Neriah just didn't know or didn't assume Rag was a card in the deck, or he actually just did and just messed up, like you mentioned. Either way, Zilay put himself in that position to take that game and used his resources to the absolute maximum. And he had 2 Azure Drakes he couldn't even play all game.
Right.
Like, that was a long one. Maybe a splash of Resident Sleeper in there. But overall, if you look at that, how that game turned out, that was a pretty sweet game, to be honest.
And yeah, it goes back to what I was saying, kind of like somewhere in the middle there, where, you know, even though that deck is, you know, somewhat more mid-rangey and would be considered to have like less value, I guess, in a nutshell, like it just doesn't. You know, you have a bunch of minions that have real stats and can just keep pushing and put up pressure. And it's something that Zilay understands very, very well. Is just that, like, having things in your deck is a great asset. You know, like control decks just play like removal spells and limited minions, but spells generally just aren't as good as minions in this game, right? So you can still outvalue a greedier deck just by being very, very ration heavy with your minions. And that's exactly what he did. It was beautifully played, and I think it was just kind of one key mistake from Neriah at the end there that might cost him.
Yeah, really cool game there. And just to remind all you guys, you just saw the 2 expansions that have been added to the pool of History of Hearthstone. So everything up and including the Grand Tournament is playable by these players in this week's mode. Next week, it's going to be even more expansions involved. But look at the scores. Zilay 1-1 versus Neriah. Neriah taking the win with the Echo Giants Mage, and Zilay with the Warrior. And now there's Priest and the Control Warrior again for Neriah, and then this Mage and Paladin for Zilay.
Zilay's just allergic to fatigue. That's what we're learning right now. But I do also want to give a shout out to, like, games like that aren't really possible anymore because of the advent of Death Knights, right? Like, Death Knights just make everyone's late game so powerful that it's near impossible to push them to fatigue like that, right? They're just such like built-in win conditions.
Shudderwalk as well, for example.
Yeah, like, you know, there's a bunch of other inevitable win conditions that I'm not even talking about, you know, like the Togwaggle nonsense, Malagos Druid, you know, Shudderwalk, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, as a mechanic, Death Knights generally gave classes just like inevitability, right? If they get there and they're stable, like Death Knights are just too hard to keep up with. So you rarely see matchups play out like that, like 30 cards versus 30 cards. So, you know, it's a little nostalgia package in that sense as well, just a throwback to when control decks didn't necessarily have huge win conditions to blow out at the top of their curve.
Yeah, Max, the control matchups were always who used the resources the best. And that was definitely a highlight. But let's get into this game. It looks like a relatively aggressive Mage from Zilay, also known as Tempo Mage, more likely, versus Neriah's Priest, which is including Holy Champion, but also that cheeky Kezan Mystic there, just in case.
Thanks. I know what Necklace Agony is. It's fine. Chat, just in case you didn't. There you go.
3/3 lifesteal, man. Also, the lifesteal ability clearly showing that this is a card from a later portion of the game, but random effects cannot be controlled, hence them being a little bit random. And that means that they are allowed, before anyone goes a little bit crazy, in case you've just joined the stream, they are allowed to be played, but they cannot be put in any decks.
Yep. I once played in a big LAN tournament in the UK. It's called Insomnia. It used to be, you know, one of our biggest Hearthstone events of the year, and the scheduling of the tournament was as such that, like, the early weeks of Blackrock Mountain were out, but they were banned just because they were so close to when the tournament was happening. And then someone unstable portaled me in their Tempo Mage and hit Emperor Thaurissan, and I was mad. And then that happened to me again in the same tournament 2 rounds later, and I won.
I've never heard this story before.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not in the slightest bit upset about it. I'm actually not. I just like the happy ending that I actually won both of those games.
See, there's always a casual brag in there for Souls, even bad stories.
Every time.
Whereas mine, it's more surprising to hear a brag in any stories I tell. The normally doom and gloom.
Well, it comes from a very limited pool of things that you have to brag about, right?
Or I've just not told anyone, you know. You never know.
Okay.
I'm keeping it as a surprise.
Gotcha.
Like the Naru, gonna be nice just to put something else onto the board, and Neriah already just having to work out exactly how he needs to just stem this aggression. And what he's going to go for right now is that Circle of Healing with the trade. Just draw a couple of additional cards, and guess what? No Dust Breakers today.
So this is our first time seeing this priest deck, I think, from Neriah. But as predicted, it is very AoE heavy. So it does look like Neriah is on that counter Patron plan. And off that circle does pick up the Shadow Word Pain for the Mana Worm, which is a huge draw, because now all of a sudden he's pretty much contesting this board state evenly. He started that turn miles behind, and then a 5-2, draw 2 cards, and kill your 3-3 Mana Worm on turn 3. That's kind of a crazy swing in terms of the board state, right?
Yeah, and this turn is pretty awkward for Zilay. It's slightly colored by the fact that I can see this Mystic in hand from Neriah. So this mirror entity is going to get a little bit spicy. They just end up doing the Frostbolt along with the Thanos just to clear up the big threat, but you are leaving a cleric on board, which is horrifying in most instances, especially one with 5 health.
You did see both Circle of Healings get used already, though, so it's unlikely to be too dangerous. But yeah, if the priest starts cycling through their deck too heavily and is picking up those light bombs and whatever else, then you are going to have a tough time sticking Azure Drakes to the board, which otherwise are a massive terror, of course, in any matchup against priest.
A small consideration for Holy Nova as well, because we are playing limited format.
Sure.
Nova is actually just a good card again. Everyone played Holy Nova back in the day because it was just a decent priest AoE. But yeah, nothing too crazy going to happen. Zilay has to work out how he moves forward here, and he's going to go for the mirror entity and ping, I imagine, and save the mad scientist, because killing that cleric is going to be pretty valuable. And now, yoink! Why, thank you. Zilay not even bothered
to see that. Believe it or not, despite his cold, expressionless, robotic face, he does, in fact, hate to see that. Neriah's just having a good time.
Neriah's just remembering the good old days. And apologies for the slight delay, but I don't think many people expected to put a Mage Secret over Priest in this game. but we got there.
They pulled it off, yeah. Good job.
Good job. I'm just being amused by some people in Twitch chat right now.
They were asking why Zilay wasn't conceding a few minutes ago. I caught that one.
I just like that neither of them had baits at the start.
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
Oh, never change, Twitch chat. Never change.
So yeah, the mad scientist into the mirror entity was always the play that Zilay wants to make, because it's just a crappy minion to give to Neriah, but it's also a really terrible turn for him, right? He really wants to play Drake and just get developing and move on with his own game plan. So he had to really consider the pros and cons of whether he was dropping the Drake and giving a Drake, or just dropping mad scientist and kind of sacrificing another turn of tempo.
It gets really weird, and now this Holy Champion just clearing up this. Or maybe not. Valuing the Holy Champion because it can be healed and it can be buffed, of course. Just getting a little bit. Oh, Neriah doesn't like that. Can't even kill it. And if he'd misplay, he could have traded the other way and killed off the hog.
Hoggers.
Hoggers. Zilay's loving a bit of hogger right now. And now with his Arcane Blast, he can actually clear off the Holy Champion pretty easily, or even better, the old Azure Drake Arcane Blast with a Mana Worm draw. Sounds like I've just read off a restaurant meal or something, or a recipe.
It is pretty rough, though. I mean, Neriah did debate whether he was trading with his Khazana or his Holy Champion. But, there was 2 health on the Champion, there was 3 health on the Khazan, there was that to consider. Obviously, the Holy Champion is like a massive threat in and of itself, if you can hold on to it, so I can understand why he did choose to. But then, yeah, Effigy was kind of the X factor there, which I'll confess I wasn't even considering Effigy at that point.
I'm pretty sure Neriah wasn't considering. I don't even think Zilay was considering Effigy, even when he had it equipped. Because that's a card that never really quite took off.
It was such a huge swing turn. Zilay was so far behind going into that turn, and then just single-handedly, the Hoggers has brought him back into it.
Oh, good. There was a really good pull there, though, with the Arcane Blast and the Unstable Portal as well for Neriah. Pretty high value cards there. Still got Sludge Belcher and heals. And this buffed heal as well means that you can negate so much of the damage. And as we said, this is tempo mage, not really the aggro mage we've been used to seeing recently. So you can't just aim everything to face and know you'll get there.
Yeah.
Right, you
Fireballs and
damage.
frostbolts. That's basically it in terms of their face damage. They have to stick a board to really end the game.
And you know what? Lothar as a follow-up is actually really nice here. Are you seeing anything else? I think you want to try and guard this mana worm as much as possible.
Yeah, it doesn't. There's still options your opponent has, though, right? Like, you haven't seen an Orkanite yet, like Orkanite ping. I guess then you still have the Lothar in play.
Yeah, and death means you have the mana worm in play.
Sneezed. I've caught whatever Zalay's got, the allergy to fatigue. So yeah, the only counterpoint I can really come up with is that you want to contest you want to protect a bigger board with Lothar. Like, you want to build and then drop Lothar later, so it's like really game ending. Like,
it's tough though, right? Because are you going to get a bigger board if you don't Lothar? Like, that's that's my counterpoint. It's like, I don't know. It's hard though, but Dr. Boom is going to be nice as well to just go pretty wide and ask Neriah effectively to have a light bomb a lot of the time. Oh. Okay, there we go. That's one of the key mechanics added to the game from the Grand Final.
And that's why they never saw play.
Wrecked. 1 mana, 1/2 pass. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, no, we did the statistics back in the day, right? And it turned out that, like, even if you had like a massively like favored greedy deck, like super heavy control deck versus like even a mid-rangey deck, you were still only something like 65% favored to win a joust, which just isn't good enough, you know? Like, you're not.
Well, also as well, when you consider
like a your deck.
When you consider at this point, you could still play just Zombie Chow.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
which is the card you're effectively trying to build with Gadgets and Joust person. Do you ever, in terms of when we talked about building a big board and protecting it, do you ever Emperor now so you can get Boom Lothar the following turn?
Boom Lothar, I like the sound of that.
Those are two good cards, so I've been told. And when you can play them both in the same turn, I'm in. And you're still hitting, you know, Sorcerer's Apprentice to make it cheaper. It makes you Fireball and Frostbolt, so you've got some extremely cheap burst combos with that Apprentice as well.
I kind of like fireballing this Orkanite Soul Priest as well, though. Otherwise, it's very irritating.
Okay, gonna go for that instead.
Yeah.
Let's do everything you want to do. Name that film.
I'm trying to catch the reference in my head, but I can't.
I didn't put on enough of the impression to give you the easy out.
Okay.
My hair's looking very similar to the main character's hair right now.
Oh, is it Ace Ventura?
Yeah.
I was gonna say that, but like, I feel like you would have put more stank on it if it was Ace Ventura, you know? But I guess that was the bait.
Yeah.
Okay. Shadower deathing a mana worm. Any control priest player is intimately familiar with that play and has made it numerous times over the course of Hearthstone.
Yep, Neriah's going to have one extra nightmare tonight when he goes to sleep after this tournament. It's one of those mixed feelings plays, isn't it? Because on one hand, oh great, I can kill the mana worm. On the other hand, it got to 5 attack.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Yeah, this has to be the Emperor for the big turn, right? Zalay's just running out of juice, and he needs one turn to get him there, and this is going to be the Boom Lothar turn, and maybe straight after a death, that Emperor's safe, or relatively safe. Like, imagine this is Light Bomb to kill this Emperor right now. Like, that's a big win for Zalay.
Yeah, exactly.
We can see, of course, death is there, but, you know, it's as unlikely as it's ever going to get at this point in the game.
And this was always the weakness of Control Priest in like previous metagames. They didn't have Shadow Visions available to them. So Priest removal, when you look at it, it's all very situational. It's conditional, right? There's ifs on all of their removal cards. So if you didn't have the right one at a right time, you just kind of had to hold that L, you know? Like you couldn't interact with the board. You couldn't go fishing for it with Shadow Visions to find the right card at the right time. So a lot of beating Control Priest really involved putting them in positions like that, where it's just like, well, it's just statistically likely you don't have the right removal card for this spot. But Neriah does have it, does have the death. So now it looks like Boom Lotheb is appealing, but he does not have a great deal of refill after that.
I think it's actually Boom Lotheb into Unstable Portal Leroy for lethal. It's going to be for the following turn, but yeah. I think he just has to though, right? What is he waiting for? The more you wait, the more Neriah heals, the more he draws more answers, and Lotheb's your window to say, you're not light bombing me this turn. As this is a relatively awkward turn, mainly because, well, I guess Blade Master and the Cleric into Lotheb, and then heal the Blade Master. But yeah, this timing is actually kind of awkward based on Neriah's hand right now. You can't really get much of anything done. Goes for the heal first, I imagine. Yeah. Second 11 mana light bomb. Let's go. Okay, and now some form of silence off the Unstable Portal.
He's going to drop the Waker. I wonder whether maybe there's a chance he holds on to it. Looks for an Arcane Intellect coming out on the follow-up.
It's kind of like Leroy. So now he waits, right? You don't play that until you see a light bomb.
Can he afford to?
Oh, Belcher's such a good card. Imagine if Belcher just was any other card. Suddenly Zilay can just lethal him potentially this turn with that rack. You know what I mean? It's just an innocuous, relatively overweight 5-mana taunt. Suddenly.
Okay, now that Boombot has hit for 4, you 100% ping so we've seen both Shadow Word Deaths already, right? So how does this 7/4 get cleared? Answer, probably Light Bomb. So if Light Bomb comes out, you definitely don't want Rag on the board. Combine that all with the fact there was just a nice juicy 4/1 there for the ping. Yeah, it all makes a lot of sense to me.
Does not scare me.
Don't think this Rag even is going to be enough though to get through this position. That's a huge Cabal Shadow Priest pickup from Neriah as well, taking away the Flame Waker. It's always one of the key points of the matchups. Actually, is like Control Priest really played for survival in this matchup a lot of the time. If they didn't get a super clutch early curve with Cleric into Deathlord or whatever else to just win the board, then it often came down to both players being very, very low on cards, and then Priest's late game cards just interacting very well with Mage's late game cards. That Cabal Shadow Priest is on Flame Waker is again something I think that Ness nailed several times during that run we were talking about, where he did beat Dog in the finals of Insomnia. His run up to that final, I think he was crushing people with those Cabal Shadow Priest plays.
Oh, I wanted that to be a Rag. It'd be so sick. 16 to face, let's go. But Zilay, I think quite rightly, just has to go kind of commit to everything. We see double light bomb. It's going to hurt quite dramatically, especially because both of Neriah's don't die to the light bomb. Both of Neriah's minions, should I say.
Ooh. Well, that's
Zilay's nothing going, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, classic. It's like the piloted Sky Golem into piloted Shredder into Millhouse. That ever happened to you? Because it happened to me.
I think I've seen it once. I probably casted it as opposed to it happening to me. I'll never be that unlucky. Now, what cards are even in Zilay? Oh my god, he could have double ranked him for lethal. Why wasn't that the storyline? Rewrite the script, people.
I know.
Neriah playing around the punish for light bomb there by getting his light warden killed.
Chat's just got to Hoggers. Oh, why can't we play Hogger? Why isn't it a good card? It'd be such a good meme.
Can't play, well, play original Hogger.
No, I mean, so why isn't it a good card? So I'm saying, why isn't it good enough to be in the meta?
I was just thinking of the other one, the 6/6, 7-man 6/6.
Doom of Elwyn or whatever the name of that thing was. Yeah.
Why is it Doom of Elwyn, Sol?
Oh, don't know. Come on. What? How am I supposed to know that?
By being a nerd. And actually knowing stuff about the game you commentate. God. But Neriah takes that game, and it just was out of reach for Zalay just too many times. I think the double light bomb was absolutely huge, just saying, well, these big threats that we've talked a lot about that, you know, Naxxramas, GVG, you know, and the later expansions have with Thaurissan, Lothar, Boom, for example, Rag, all these big threats that you can play in your aggressive decks to go late game, light bomb, death, game. And Zalay just ran into that. So Neriah's going to take it 2-1 so far. Is he going to be able to win with his last deck? I can't remember what it is.
So what did he win with? He
was
won
his warrior, right?
Yeah, of course it's the warrior. Yeah, he won with mage, won with priest, and then his warlock's banned.
Just getting ready.
Selling. It's that very aggressive mage, or a reasonably aggressive mage coming out the control warrior for one of the matchups though. So it might not be still a particularly long matchup. Hello.
I'm winning.
I suddenly got miles better looking. How strange.
And I just suddenly had a vest on.
Again, it's neither of these casters had beards when this series started. Right? It's just like we've suddenly aged into the form you see up in front of us.
Yeah. I like that we suddenly aged into these forms when I think both of those players are younger than us.
Zalay's kind of an old boy. He might be the same age or maybe a little older than me. I'm not.
Oh really? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll take on the young side for once.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's we haven't seen the paladin yet from Zalay, right? I think he's played warrior twice and then the mage.
Yeah,
we don't know what that is, so it's unlikely. It's possible that it's a very slow mid-range list or a control list that will just hero power pass and try and take control warrior all the way. That is a thing from way back in the day, but it's more likely it does try and push damage and push threats a little bit against this control warrior. So it's unlikely that we're going to see anything go all the way back to fatigue like we did before, but still very possible. I mean, that mage versus priest game was only 3 or 4 cards away from fatigue, so
this is a nice opening as long as these minions aren't complete trash from Zalay with these portals. I can see though, there's a bash available for next turn. I wonder if Zalay considers that and goes for a secret. I don't know. Be too much for bait, you get punched anyway. Oh, 1 mana 5/5. Plays around bash, coin, play it and bring the mana word back to your hand.
Wait, what? It's death rattle.
Is it death rattle?
Yeah,
oh, okay. I'll tell you guys a secret. I don't think anyone knows this. I still don't have that card in my collection.
Wait, what?
Because it's a class challenge card, right? And I never did the rogue one.
Oh, really?
Naxxramas. I think it's Naxxramas class challenge. Remember when you had to do those?
It sounds right, yeah.
Yeah, like web spinners, right? For the hunter one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just didn't do it. Well, this game just got a little bit nutty.
Yeah. He's not going to be healing too many things, though, for the Matriarch, so it's just got a 4 mana 4/9. But yeah, Unstable Portal is just a very, very goofy card.
The weird thing is, if Zalay plays... He's not going to play, he's going to play Shredder, right?
Well, the problem is, like, he wants to make Neriah kill this 5/3 without playing other things. That's why this card's so bad and why it never got played. Like, 4 mana 5/5 sap your own minion. Like, that's just not a good idea.
The issue is the dragon's going to get returned back to its normal mana.
Yes, exactly.
Which is why he wants to lean towards the Shredder, or maybe even just the Flamewaker. So what he could do is actually play the Flamewaker, and if Neriah kills the 5/3, then he returns the Flamewaker, still has coins, still has options for the following turn, and the Flamewaker's not dead.
Yeah. He can also just
might be better,
play
right?
Mirror Entity, though, right? And, like, if that turns into a minion and then gets bounced back into his hand, well, great. You know, he turned Mirror Entity into a minion in his hand. It's kind of a win for him. Yeah. And, like, this is a 5/3, you know? It's not like a minion that Neriah can just ignore forever. He is going to have to kill this thing eventually. It's a very tough turn. I think you can see that from how deep in the tank Zalay is on this rope.
Definitely a lot to consider here. He's going to go for it as well.
Yeah. That's what I leant towards. Just make him kill the 5/3 without any significant downside for you.
Ooh, nice.
This is what it's very awkward against, though, because now, yet again, you just see quite how bad this minion is, because what on earth do you do here with an Anubar Ambusher on board? You really want to hit that 5-3 into the 3-5. Well, JK.
Do you drop Lothab? Oof. I wondered if you drop Lothab and take the 50-50.
Yeah, I can see that.
This does keep the pressure on, though. Just trade a Fireball for being able to keep on, you know, like 8 power on the board, which is a pretty big deal.
Right.
Again, though, suddenly, you know, Emperor or Lothab, you get a live effect that turn, and if it bounces back, what a shame. You know, you can replay. And when you've got cards like this, you know, Cheap Dragon, like Flame Waker, like Coin, not for the discount, of course, but for the effect, and the Ragnaros, then, you know, proccing the Emperor more than once is going to be pretty nice too.
If there's one thing, as much as I do hate this card, Anubar Ambusher or whatever it's called, it is making this game very interesting right now.
Could it have been 3 mana?
Could it have been 3 mana? Yes, just about, I think. I think it probably would have been a strong 3 mana card, but not a broken 3 mana card.
And, you know, contrary to popular belief, there is a difference between strong and broken. Most people think all strong cards need to be nerfed.
Hey, some people think that reducing an entire deck by 1/1 won't change anything, so, you know, comes in all sorts of packages.
How many quest rogues have you played recently, Sol? Not that I disagree with you, though. I'm just being an arse for the fun of it at this point. But I've played 0 quest rogues on ladder since the nerfs.
Neriah definitely facing a problem here.
Death does not
Brawl does function as a board clear as long as this ambusher is A, on board, and B, dies in the process of the brawl. As long as it isn't the sole survivor, it will then bounce the other remaining minion back to hand.
God, imagine it survives. Imagine it just never dies. You're just like, wow, that was just a 1 mana 5/5.
Yeah, just gets in for 5 every turn for the rest of the game.
Just like 45 damage over, you know, X amount of turns. It'd be crazy. This is such a... These hands start to get really weird when Emperor's involved now. Because you need to work out when something is worth playing because you can play it so much cheaper. And each card gets progressively more powerful, but you can't exactly just pass every turn.
Yeah, it's weird because he's not consistently discounting the cards that you want to necessarily. Like, you're not getting like a Flame Waker OTK built up, right? Like, we haven't even seen Antonidas in this deck. I'm not sure if it's there. So again, like, Antonidas discounting alongside spells is a very big deal. Like, he's discounting a bunch of minions, but he hasn't seen Brawl from his opponent yet anyway, or any like mass removal. So these minions being cheap and allowing him to just vomit a bunch of minions on the board isn't really a huge upside outside of this one Lothab turn, right? Like, this is his final push in terms of where he can just vomit minions everywhere and get away with it.
I do like this play, though. Because you also, you know, Lothab, you think you're immune, but on turn 10, they can still brawl. So you want value out of Lothab. This is as wide as he's ever going to get. We see Gaiden come down. Excuse me. And it's going to bounce one of these 3 big boys. Lothab, okay.
Oh, dear.
No brawl for you, friend.
Well, that is just deeply unpleasant. I do also wonder about Neriah poked the slime with his armor smith, right? Which was going to die to the Geddon anyway to pick up an extra point of armor. But he left his armor smith then as a 1/1, which means that it can just be pinged as opposed to an actual resource having to be thrown at it. So, like, all things considered, don't you gain more armor or health or whatever you want to look at by making Zalay throw something at that armor smith to deal with it?
Well, it dies the following turn anyway, right?
To the next Geddon proc, you mean?
So is he just okay if he pings? Yeah, ping my 1/1. Cool. Okay, that 1 damage makes a nice little trade there with the Shredder. Very weird though, as you mentioned before, Zillage not having spells for most of this game is not how this deck normally functions.
Yeah, there were definitely elements like this, back in the day. You know, a tempo deck kind of has minions in it. You know, that's kind of by definition. So it was a very minion-heavy deck that was supported by really clutch, cheap spells like Arcane Blast and Flame Cannon and so on that could achieve more than the mana cost printed on them, which is, you know, kind of what tempo means.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's just a couple of minions and then a bunch of burn spells. You know, it's about as far from tempo mage as you can possibly imagine, and yet that name has just stuck.
Much to the anger of Mr. Subtle.
Oh, it tilts me so much.
What about Burn Mage, so?
I'm fine with calling it Burn Mage, but
And then, what about
they
what
already,
it's called?
yeah,
Burn
they already
Mage?
assigned that name to a deck that wasn't a burn deck. So I don't know.
It had fire in it,
People just
so
don't know
it could
what
get
words
burnt.
mean, Raven.
Well, now, this Ragnaros is just at the cost, along with the rest of Zilay's hand, of course, but most importantly, the Ragnaros. It can just be whipped into many, many turns right now. So he can drop this exactly when he wants to without much fear of worrying about what the rest of his turn looks like. How much damage does he even have right now? 15?
15 plus a ping plus a rag is the max, so 24, one off. Can't fit the mirror. Okay, so mirror entity, both Flamewakers go face. Play rag, rag goes face is lethal.
Easy.
Yeah.
What's kind of funny is all go face and mirror entity was something I was thinking about anyway. Like, why do you ever want to trade this board?
I don't think you're trading for sure. I think
That-
I think all go face is a really good start to what our turn is here.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, I like the entity as well. Oh, close.
Okay. So he left himself back the 5/5 option as to whether he wants to smack that into the boom, depending on where his Flamewaker shots go. Like if one Flamewaker shot hit the boom, he could then ping it and trade the Lotheb if he wanted to. Interesting that the Flamewaker attack didn't go through though, because you know there is a very realistic non-zero chance that does die to a boom bot in that interaction, right? There is also a chance that the 5/5 would die if the 2 shots hit both boom bots, but that's a much lower percentage. But yep, jam face. I think this makes sense at the end of the day.
Just play stuff now.
Yeah, play
But
stuff.
did he not go
things.
for? Oh, he didn't go for the scientist. I thought he was going to drop the scientist just to get it on the board. But I guess the mirror entity is going to do that job for himself anyway.
Yeah.
And now he has 0 mana minions, which pretty good.
Before getting into casting, Sottle cutting afford a proper haircut. Now that's a true success story. Because he meant couldn't. Right, nice try, cheeky.
I'm sure you have never heard hair jokes before.
Oh, never did.
It's the first. Ooh, okay. It's okay.
So he's at
Spells?
14. Any burn spell is lethal. No, it doesn't get there. You can still Drake for a Fireball, which is still lethal
look
with
at
how
these.
discounted this hand is.
Wow. Starts rag, right? Oh.
It's lethal. Yeah,
Whack.
Fireball Rag. That's exactly what
Yep.
I'm talking
Yep. That's going to be game number 4 going to Zalay. He's going to even it up 2-2. And like, look how different this aggressive style of Mage can look from then to now, I guess. Like, that game would have been decided probably 5 turns, 6 turns ago, maybe even before then, in terms of the current version of Aggro Mage. But then, like, the deck's like, it's just the key cards. Every card that had an impact in the potential of late game for Zalay there is no longer playable in standard. Ragnaros, Lotheb, Thorison, of course, and even the portals to a certain extent were a huge point of the success in Zalay's game right there. So this one's going to come down to the last one.
Yeah, you saw
we
like
made up the time we lost by only having 3 matches today.
right, yeah. You saw like a total like BRM starter kit there, right? In terms of like the cards that were almost universally powerful across most decks, like Loatheb, Ragnaros was still a terror back then, and then any kind of like heavy deck had that Emperor in there as well to really start pushing through. Not just the combo decks, there was a lot of just heavy control that packed it in there as well. So yeah, it was a good glimpse into what mid range looked like back then, and Zalay was able to overcome the very, very heavy control. And it's going to come down to what this paladin is. Is it secret paladin? Is it mid range paladin? Is it a more late game focused paladin that can pretty much just hero power pass against control warrior and see if it can get the job done?
Or is it aggro paladin, which somehow takes a win sometimes when it's played in a tournament? Let's find out. So we go in the last game. It'll be the last game of the day as well. The History of Hearthstone tournament week number 3. There are plenty more weeks coming up as well. So make sure you follow the channel Tempo_Storm that you're already on watching right now. Click the follow button as we've got plenty more coming up for the next few weeks for you guys. And this is a pretty cool format. At least I think so. I'm sure you agree, Saul, because this is just old school throwback casting right now.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed, as we were talking about it earlier, we kind of went through like the history of casting as well, right? Like we started off with the OGs, with the Frodans. Falcone got like that one job in the middle somewhere where like no one else could do it, so he showed up, and now we're into like the new era of Hearthstone casting with you and I as well, So
Well, I like to call it the golden age.
exactly, the golden age of Hearthstone casting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've really enjoyed it because it's just been such an awesome nostalgia trip just to watch, just like watching Admirable like just freak out every time a card has been drawn on the last like couple of weeks has been amazing. It's like, oh my god, I remember that card. It's like, yeah, we all do too, Admirable. I know.
Shows that the game is aged pretty well, though, to be completely honest. Because
I mean, anytime a game gets to a position where you can have nostalgia about it, like it's done something right, Like, it's a good thing.
And now, Minibot, Coghammer. Every game, every Paladin game, we've seen this play happen on turn 3, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
It's so strong.
It really is. But here is a classic interaction, a classic leverage point against Paladin. Just drop an Acolyte on 3. They can't really deal with it. True Silver Champion is the only thing that works in this spot, and that would mean overwriting a lot of value from this existing weapon from Coghammer.
Also, that would mean running it, as I'm pretty sure the availability of weapons in this current meta, True Silver wasn't really that popular, to be completely honest. Mustafa Battle being a nod to that as well. But I will say that just to guard True Heart, in this matchup for Paladin, is pretty good, as a lot of the time you used to be able to just press hero power for 2 dudes, pass, and then keep going.
Yep. I remember very, very early on in my casting career, so I got a little personal reminiscence package here. I think it was with Nimch at DreamHack 2015 or something like that. And a mid-range paladin just played Justicar against Control Priest, and I've said on the cast to Nimch, like, Nimch, this paladin is just never going to play a card for the rest of the game. He's just going to press hero power every turn and win. Like, that happened exactly, and so like Nimch just couldn't believe that it was happening. It's like the reverse of the Hagatha outvalue of the Warlock last week at ACT, where I couldn't believe what TJ said had actually come true.
It was funny because he said it so like nonchalantly as well. He was just like, oh yeah, you just don't play anything. You just tag a thing and then win.
Yeah.
Like, what? What
I was like, yeah, right.
The natural
idiot.
The natural thing is like, what does Hagatha's effect do versus Warlock? And then very the same here. Like, what do 1/1s do against a priest or a warrior? It's just 2 1/1s.
Right.
No, it's 2 1/1s for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Death Lord always a weird card to want to deal with or choose how to deal with, because Zalay could get a boom, a challenger, whatever out of this Death Lord, right?
Yeah.
Which you could think was bad, but also it's very early to just have a big minion on the board. Could get a Shredder as well, but he does have to put a lot of resources into trying to deal with this. I mean, he can't actually do it this turn anyway, but in general, it just feels awkward enough to deal with. I think it was a very well-balanced card, Death Lord.
Yeah, I think so too. I think maybe the randomness of it was a little bit swingy in places, but I think like the philosophy behind the card is a very good one. The fact that control decks ended up playing it to force the opponent to overextend into removal, you know? So like the downside wasn't even a downside. That's very cute, the way the meta evolved. But going back to your point, I think pulling a challenger specifically off the Death Lord is really bad for you because you don't really ever want to be drawing secrets in this matchup. You know, you need to make sure you're drawing gas. Although saying that, the fact that Zalay has Justicar in his version, maybe he's fine with, you know, just not removing cards from his deck and just pressing 1/1s forever. Who knows? He seemed very adamant that he wants to play Fatigue in every matchup so far. So
well, that's the thing. I mean, honestly, what's kind of funny is, were we all missing a trick at this point in the meta? Should we all have just put Justicar in almost every deck?
I played Justicar in Secret Paladin for a long time.
Yeah, you know what I mean though? Like, was it just good? Was it just correct? Because we play decks with this effect, but we have to build a deck in a certain way around it now.
Right,
You just put this card in the deck. You know, like, it doesn't matter what your deck looks like. You can just play Justicar. So maybe we were wrong all along.
Yeah, because as we were talking about back in the day, like control decks didn't have ultimate win conditions, right? Where if you just let them get to turn 15 and draw their deck, they killed you. You know, that's what most decks are that are late game decks these days. So I just loved mid-range Paladin and just pressing 1/1s and just not doing anything else and just say, well, good luck outvaluing me. You know, you've built a purely value-based deck, but I can beat you with this one card. Like, what are you doing? Build a better deck. Build a deck that does something, you know?
Yeah, now I actually don't really know what Zalay's going to do versus this Baron Geddon, as his answers are not good enough. Light's Justice in hand from the Muster for Battle is not going to do much right now. His hero powers don't do anything, and boom, I guess he just has to boom and just accept that he loses it. He can't even boom in Redemption to cause any form of awkwardness. But I think you have to, right? You can't just take 7 pass.
Yeah.
Wait. Does he? Hear me out, Sal.
All right.
This is a terrible idea, just so you know preemptively.
Okay.
If you really don't want to boom, he can hero power, Coghammer Redemption.
Okay.
The Geddon hits the taunt.
I see where you're going with this.
You swing with the Coghammer once, take 7, then you can at least swing again to take a total of like 18 damage, which leaves you up on 2 to then win the game from there.
You preemptively surmised that play perfectly, Regan. It was indeed terrible.
I had to talk about something while Zalay finally realized that yes, you just have to play boom and suck it up.
Yeah.
Ooh, cheeky little boom bots.
See, it's all fun and games now. Like, you know, 2 years down the line or whatever, when we're looking back at this, just having a fun tournament, you can laugh as Neriah at that interaction. When that happened in the actual metagame, you
day
were not
in,
laughing.
day out. This was your life, getting boom botted and losing games. This was literally every player's life.
That rug would have been off the wall. We'd have torn it down, thrown it out the window. That Hearthstone poster would have been torn into shreds. So it would have
that vest would have just been off.
He would have just hulked out of his vest.
He's already ripped the sleeves off in frustration tonight. His beard would have grown at least twice as long. Everything would have gone crazy.
Zalay's just out of value though. This is the problem. And now, like, how much work are those 1/1s going to be able to do? Because it's one thing where like the key to like Justicar Paladin was always that you had that like Chow or whatever Secret Keeper into Minibot, into Muster, and then you were ahead, right, going into the turn where you played Justicar. And then from that point you just grind. You just press hero power, you stay just that little bit ahead of the board the whole time. It's much more difficult to do that from behind.
So this looks like, okay, maybe you can mount a comeback, but the old Fireworks bash face for lethal.
Zalay, DQ'd. That shredder is on the left. You fool.
Placement, lol, but Neriah. You swing face although this could be get down. You swing face every single time. Hit to the face, bash to the face, and Neriah is going to be the winner finally. It is only apt that the Resident Sleeper Tank Up Warrior took a couple of games to get going, but got there eventually, I think is the true summary of the deck.
It got progressively quicker, yeah. But I'm glad that I'm glad that we're talking to Neriah and that he won, so that hopefully he won't be too salty. Because I really want to talk about like what thought process was in those last couple of turns in that warrior mirror, and how he got into that spot. But you can see, most importantly, he is now joining Dane on that 3-0 record, picking up a 3-2 win against the only other remaining undefeated player outside of those two, which was Zolay. And Ant versus Orange, although you see it there on the schedule, and unfortunately had some flight delays on his way to DreamHack Austin, so unfortunately won't be able to play on stream. Those guys are going to play their game off stream. So.
Yep. All I'm going to be asking for, if I ever get asked to be played in this tournament, is to be put on the left side of the scoreboard. As those are just all the winners, clearly, and that is the way to take the match. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we're just getting it now. We're ready for a call, if my sources are correct. But yeah, it's unfortunately we not get to see Ant and Orange. As now that we've casted it, I kind of just want to cast more of this format, to be honest, and just see what else people do, because we saw some of the more sort of sideways approaches, Jackie and Dane, for example, and even Neriah with the Echo Giants Mage, for example. Yeah. The sideways approaches have kind of worked out, so I believe we do have Neriah ready. We can ask him, mainly for me, if he appears. Hello, Neriah. Do you want to just let us know how you brought a very different lineup with the Tank Warrior, the Echo Mage? What were you thinking about targeting?
I was thinking about targeting Patron Warrior, like probably everyone else thought. And that like all these decks are just crashing Patron Warrior. Maybe like only Priest is shaky, but everything else should be really good. And also try to target Freeze Mage. As you saw, I had Kazan Mystic in my Priest.
Right.
I mean, it's also good against Secret Paladin, so it was kind of like a mix of everything.
Yeah, just a decent card to include. How do you feel about this week? Were you looking forward to this meta with these expansions available? Because I feel like the two expansions we have, Blackrock and the Grand Tournament, really added some power cards like Justicar, for example.
Actually, those two expansions were probably the least like challenging. Not challenging, how to say it. Like, there was the least amount of cards compared to Nax and GVG. Even if you look at the meta reports and stuff, there are only a few cards that are actually used in the meta from Blackrock Mountain mostly, and from TGT. I don't even remember, besides Justicar, anything that was played really.
Mysterious Challenger. That's.
Oh yeah, Mysterious Challenger. Yeah, that one.
See, I wanted to.
It wasn't like.
Oh, go on. Carry on.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, I just wanted to specifically ask you that Marathon Warrior game that you had. When you got like right to the end there, you had that option to like you could either execute or trade Groms, right? To kill the Grom at the end. Like, what was going on in your head for like those last couple of turns?
Oh, I already lost at that point. I knew that because like I didn't have a way to kill Grom and Rag at the same time. Or like even if I do kill both, I don't kill 3/6, and I still lose in fatigue then.
Okay, fair enough.
So like I knew that he had Rag, so I wouldn't be able to win. Like I needed to clear Dragon without using my hard removal. That was the plan.
I will say, chat greatly loved watching that warrior play. That pressing the hero power was fantastic. but chat appreciate that. But I will say seriously, that game overall was actually very interesting. We were talking about the difference in control decks then to control decks now. Being played out very differently.
Actually, like, when I was building the deck, I was thinking about playing Bouncing Blades over one Acolyte, just to like have more removals, and it actually mattered in the end. If I would put it, I would probably win.
That's actually kind of crazy. Some of the cards we might not have seen back in the day could be included now. But again, congratulations, Neriah. Appreciate it, and we'll see you next week at some point, ready for the next match. So good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so that is going to be all the matches being played out for today. You can see week 3 is the week we're on right now, where we had Blackrock Mountain and the Grand Tournament added into the pool. Next week, week 4, League of Explorers, One Night in Karazhan, and Whispers of the Old Gods. Those, in my opinion at least, are all 3 powerhouse expansions to really going to mix it up.
Yeah, and so pro tip, if this week is anything to go by, if you're Jackie Chan's opponent next week, he's bringing Camel Hunter 100% of the time. He's bringing his meme deck of infamy from each era so far, so seems like a pretty good shout.
Yeah, there's tons of crazy stuff that's going to kick in for next week, so make sure you follow the channel and get ready to watch that and be ready to see some more wacky Jackie decks going on. But let's take a look at the standings and see where everyone is placing so far. Dane and Neriah, first place at the moment, well, joint first with 3-0 scores, unbeaten. And then Zalay taking a loss to Neriah, taking his first loss there. But the rest, not looking so hot right now.
Yeah, and Orange still with that game in hand, though. So the two players without a win, both of those have the opportunity, and one of them, of course, is guaranteed to get their first win on the board. So there is only going to be one player with the fat goose egg going into our next week.
Yeah, starting off at 0-3 is going to be not really what these players are going to be looking for, but we'll see what happens. Although, you know, as we come into the end of the day, or the end of the show at least, I had a great time. So I've watched the first 2 weeks, of course, but we got to cast this one, and it was actually even better than I thought it was. I thought it would be. Sorry, I actually had a lot of fun just talking, reminiscing as well.
Yeah,
about the old days.
Yeah,
We can call them old days.
It's been a good time. If there's one thing that we've clearly learned, though, it's like the game can support Warsong Commander being unnerfed, right? Because Patron in its current form is obviously trash. You saw how exciting it was when we had Molten Giant, another card that was cruelly snatched away from us, then suddenly get reinstated to its fun form. We had great matchups like that Echo Giants Mage come out as well. So Blizzard, please. Chucky, Keaton Gill, please. Unnerf Warsong Commander and give us back the greatest deck in Hearthstone history. Thank you.
I imagine in 10 years' time, Sol's still going to be asking for Warsong Commander. We camped outside Blizzard HQ.
Yep.
And it's like, no, Sol, we said no, leave it at that. And it's just not going to be the case. But there's plenty more stuff coming up, guys. So make sure, again, you follow this channel to watch more for the next few weeks of History of Hearthstone. Super cool format, super cool players. And as of this week, super cool casters too. So a huge thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. From Sol and myself, have a good night.